So, should we begin, Professor Girish? Should we begin?
Yeah.
So, like, welcome to you all for the day 7th. Yeah, day 7 of the International Vedanta Congress. Probably one of the longest running Vedanta Congress, which shows that how persistent we are and we are willing to take the time. It has been wonderful to listen to all the lectures and discussions. So before we start today our session, formal session, I would like to invite Anant to recite, do some chanting as we do every day. So please, Anant, take over.
हम जो पाठ करने जा रहे हैं वो एक शुक्ल यजुर्वेद का एक मंत्र है जिसका मैं घन पाठ करूंगा। वेद के 2 प्रकार के पाठ किए जाते हैं, एक पाठ होता है, एक पाठ होता है। तो इस प्रकार संहिता, पद और क्रम, और पाठ के जो है उसके नाम है रेखा, ध्वज, रथ और दंड और घन। इनमें जो एक कठिन माना जाता है वो घन पाठ। तो एक मंत्र में उसी घन पाठ क्या ही एक मंत्र में यहाँ पर करूंगा। ओम हरि ओम धानावन्तं करं भेणमपूपवन्तमुक्थेनं इन्द्रप्रातरजुखसवनः अथ घनपाठः। हरि ओम धानावन्तं करं भेणं धानावन्तं करं भेणमपूपवन्तं करं भेणं धानावन्तं करं भेणमपूपवन्तं धानावन्तमिति धानावन्तं करं भेणमपूपवन्तं करं भेणमपूपवन्तमुक्थेन पूपवन्तं करं भेणमपूपवन्तमुक्थेन अपूपवन्तमुक्थेन अपूपवन्तमुक्थेन अपूपवन्तमित्यपूपवन्तं मुक्थेन इन्द्रप्रातः प्रातरिन्द्रेन्द्रप्रातर्जुकस्व प्रातरिन्द्रेन्द्रप्रातर्जुकस्व प्रातर्जुकस्व प्रातः प्रातर्जुकस्व नो जुकस्व प्रातः प्रातर्जुकस्व नः जुकस्व नो जुकस्व नः न इति नः। हरिः ओम।
अनंत जी इस मंत्र का हिंदी अनुवाद करेंगे, ये आपने शुरू में बता दिया घड़पाठ के बारे में।
सर इसका हिंदी अनुवाद घनपाठ है ना, तो घनपाठ का हिंदी अनुवाद करना नहीं है।
मैं समझ गया जी, बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद अनंत जी, बलराम जी।
Thank you very much. So now we begin our formal session 15 session, and the speaker today is someone Vedanta Congress and his views, particularly the mathematical approach to Vedanta, and he's going to speak today on Atman as a scientific notion and its relation to physics and mathematics. Dr. Raju has been at the forefront of new original thinking from Indian perspective about mathematics and mathematical physics. He has his master's in mathematics and undergraduate in physics and a master's in mathematics from Mumbai, University of Mumbai, and his PhD from Indian Statistical Institute. He has some very original papers published that have been challenging some of the fundamental notions of those fields from the Western point of view. And he was very heavily involved in the development of the Indian supercomputer Param. He has authored several books in these fields, which are highly appreciated, including some of the fundamental idea that he has questioned the basis, philosophical basis of mathematics and physics that relates to equations, differential equations, and quantum mechanics, and has been appreciated by people in that field. So I think we are really looking forward to his lecture. I have heard him a couple of times. Sometimes it becomes very, very dense, but today's topic looks very interesting. So I'm looking forward to that, Professor C.K. Raju.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for giving me the little extra time that I needed. So let me start right away, since I don't know whether I'll be able to finish in time. So this talk, I mean, well, these days there may be a problem because I'm not able to type, I dictate, and if the mic is on, suddenly some nonsense may get recorded. So please allow for that. This has 5 parts. Now, I don't think I can cover all the 5 parts. I will cover mostly the first part in some depth, and the other things I will summarize. And even that first part, it has, well, I have been trying to explain it for the last 40 years. I'm not sure I can explain it in 40 minutes, but anyway, let me try. So let me give a summary of what I'm saying. If you look at the beliefs in Atman and Moksha, I'm saying they are scientific beliefs. If time is quasi-cyclic, and this makes the related ethics credible today, credible also for the Gnostic. So let's start with the first problem. First problem is the doubts about life after death. And these are core beliefs of Vedanta as well as Hinduism, but the belief in Atman involves a belief in life after death, which has long been doubted and rejected. So even the gods doubted it, and you find it even at the beginning of Nachiket's dialogue in the Kathopanishad. So about the death, there is this doubt among men. He is, says one, and he is not, say others, and I would know the truth, taught by you. So Jung also responds that even the gods were once puzzled by this mystery, and subtle is the truth regarding it, not easy to understand. Very well. So there is this doubt, and the doubt is there even in the Upanishad. And the point is that in the Indian tradition, one has to begin with the Purva Paksha, or the opposite position. You must begin with it. And if you don't address it, there is a big problem that you don't quite understand your own position if you are not able to address the Purva Paksha. So it's a very simple Purva Paksha, you know, how is there life after death? And so somebody who gives a lengthy pravachan without addressing the Purva Paksha, he is supposed not to understand his own position. That's the situation. So the Purva Paksha is that life after death is not credible. And there were skeptics, plenty of skeptics in ancient India. So from pre-Buddhist times, you have Ajit Keshkambli, and we find this in the Samannapal Sutta of the Digha Nikaya. He calls it a doctrine of fools, an empty lie, mere idle talk. That gifts during a yajna would benefit the person after death. And his assertion was that fools and wise men alike, on the dissolution of the body, are annihilated, and after death they are not. So these doubts persisted, and they grew certainly till the time of the Adi Shankar. And you find that in Madhav's Shankar Digvijay, first canto and 27 to 29 to 39, that there were so many people who doubted this. And today, of course, you find many people saying that this belief in life after death is due to fear of death, etc. Now, the point is, in the last 2,500 years, nobody has given a proper answer to this doubt. Not even that champion of all Hindu debaters, Dayanand Saraswati, in his Satyat Prakash, you see, chapter 12, he addresses your lokayat, but not adequately. And the core reason, there is a core reason for it, that the Sanskrit Pandits went by Shabda Praman of the Ved. And this was rejected by the Gnostics, like the Buddhists, the Lokayat, and the Jains. So this question is, if we are talking about Vedanta, can we talk about it to the Gnostic? Can we address the Purva Paksh raised by the Gnostic? And abusing the Lokayat is not a valid response. Any ignorant lout can abuse or troll anything. So science is needed to persuade the non-believer. That's why I'm talking about science. And of course, it's not adequate that if science doesn't support you, say, oh, it is modern science, it's materialistic, and so on. If you want to contest modern science, perfectly all right, but show us how to build a better science. If you can't do that, then don't just say it's materialistic. Show us how to do it better. See, no point in criticizing something unless you have a better argument. But my point is just the opposite, that existing science can help to answer skeptics, both ancient and modern, in a credible way, which the Sanskrit Pandits could not do in 2,500 years. So I want to start with Payasi's experiments with life after death. He was the most outstanding of all ancient skeptics, Payasi, and we find an account of this in the Payasi Sutta of the Digha Nikaya. So he was famous for his experiments. See, the important word is experiments. People can say there is no life after death and so on. Is there some problem? So you can say that, but he performed experiments to demonstrate that there is no life after death. And this is the strongest form of the Purva Paksh, which I will therefore address. So he performed, let me tell you something about the experiments he performed. First one was with bad people. So he knew many people who had lived bad lives, killed, stole, lied, etc. When they were dying, he approached them with a proposition. If after death they went to hell, he should come and tell him or send him a message. And they agreed. But none of the dead ever returned. Second experiment was with good people, the same thing. And the good also did not return. And then he went on to wonder that if rewards were awaiting the good people, why did they not kill themselves immediately by jumping off a cliff, etc. Then he tried to weigh the soul. He performed experiments with condemned felons, weigh the man and strangle him with a bowstring. Why bowstring? So that no blood is spilled. And then weigh him again after he is dead, no difference of weight. Then he tried to watch, to see the soul. So he's put a man in a pot, covered its mouth very tightly and heated it till the man is dead, and then made a small hole to see if the soul comes out. Again, negative result. Soul could not be seen. He went on to perform about 30 such experiments. And he concluded there is no Atman and no life after death. Of course, there are plenty of other arguments since then. Why don't we remember our past lives? So if people are reborn, why does the population grow, etc.? So my first response to Payasi is this, that Payasi originated the experimental method. The record says that. So he did something very novel, that he performed experiments long before Francis Bacon. So scientific thought is not Western in origin. The experimental method did not begin with Francis Bacon. So I have an article on that. Maybe you need to take a look at it. And this describes what happened with Bacon and what Bacon did. And so please take a look at that. So he invented the experimental method. Okay, fine. But it is pseudo-nationalist to say you are comparing Vedanta with Western science, even if thought and debate is required to be limited by national boundaries. I am responding to an Indian Purva Paksh. That's my first point. Second point is there are different notions of life after death. This is very critical. And Payasi experimented with the wrong notion. He used a naive notion of life after death and did not refute the particular notion of life after death in the Upanishads. So let's ask a simple question. When does rebirth take place according to the Upanishads? All right? According to the Upanishads, according to Hinduism, when does it take place? So Payasi's experiment wrongly and naively assumed that rebirth takes place immediately after death, because he assumed that the good and bad people would return in his own lifetime. But even in popular Hinduism, that's Bhagavad Gita, rebirth takes place in successive cycles of the cosmos. And each cycle takes a very long time. So you have this slok in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8. Now, of course, you can question whether it is genuine and so on. I will not go into that. That there is day also and night in the universe. With the coming of the day of Brahma, the accent is missing, all things are manifest. And in the night of Brahma, they dissolve into what is called the unmanifest, avyat. So all past things are created again and again and dissolve again and again with the coming of the night of Brahma. So this is what Krishna is telling Arjuna. So they take place in successive days of Brahma, or kalp as they are called. And how long is a kalp? How long does a day and night of Brahma last? Again, the Bhagavad Gita tells us. We also find it in the Vishnu Puran and so on. Sahasra yug paryantam aharyad brahmano vidhu. So ahar of Brahma is Sahasra yug, is 1,000 yug. It's actually Mahayug. And the night is of a similar duration. And of course, there are variations on that. Some people change that. It does not matter. I'm not looking at the exact timing. The point is that according to the Vishnu Puran, for example, each Mahayug consists of 12,000 years of the gods. So it is something like that. It comes out to be, if you calculate it, to be 4.32 billion years. And the reason to have this peculiar idea of a divine day or day of the gods is that it should be 1 year, is because, as Aryabhat says in Goal 17, the gods say on the North Pole. Mount Meru is on top of the North Pole and the Asuras stay on the South Pole. So according to him, it's correct that if you are on the North Pole, 1 day and night will last for 1 year. Day will last for 6 months. That's correctly inferred. So that's the reason. So a point is a day and night of Brahma is 4.32 billion. A day is 4.32 billion years. So is a night. And so the total is 8.64 billion years. That's a very, very long time. You're not going to live that long. Payasi is not going to live that long for somebody to come back. And by the way, the analogy is there that an ordinary day and night on the earth lasts for 86,400 seconds. So somebody mentioned some hermetic principle and so on, as above, so below. So that's the analogy. Next question is, what is reborn? When we have seen, that's according to the Upanishads, according to the text. All right? What is reborn? And it's not just living beings, but all things. So if you see the Shveta Shvatra Upanishad, Sarva Jive Sarva Sansthe, right? So the idea is, the analogy is to a wheel, and this is the wheel of Brahman, and upon it are all creatures subject to repetition of birth, death, and rebirth. And the whole cosmos goes through a cycle in which not only living creatures, not only Sarva Jive, Sarva Sansthe, all things and events are reborn. And you can also see the simplified account in the Bhagavad Gita. So, Brahma Bhavana Loka Punaravartino Juna. So all things in the cosmos, okay, not just living beings, they repeat. So the question is, which words do they repeat in? Because you will find in the Kathopanishads, he says that those people who think there are no other words, they keep falling, they keep dying again and again and falling prey to me, come into my power. That's what Yam tells them. So these other words are not heaven and hell, as Payasi naively thought. These other words are approximate copies of this very word. They are cycles of the cosmos. So there is no description of heaven and hell in the Upanishads. There is in popular Hinduism of Mahabharata. So it is not there in the Upanishads. We are talking of Vedanta. And popular Hinduism is not quite Vedanta, as Dayanand Saraswati kept pointing out. I fully agree with him on that. So Upanishads speak only of repeated lives. They don't speak of heaven and hell. So the torture you undergo is that of repeated lives and repeated deaths. And they speak of liberation or moksha from that cycle of birth and death. So I will, we can look at once again at Shweta Shatra Upanishad, that as long as basic idea is that once you realize, the Atman realizes its unity with Brahman, it stops going on that repeated cycle of births and deaths. All right. So the summary that I'm saying is, according to tradition, according to a careful look at tradition, this is a simple answer to the Purva Paksh that Payasi, that Lokayat, etc. gave. When does it take place? Not immediately, but after a cosmic cycle. What is reborn? Not only living creatures, but all things and events repeat. The other worlds are not heaven and hell, but approximate copies of this one. So the key scientific question that brings us to this was, so far I was talking of tradition. Now I come to the scientific question. Can this thing happen? Does the cosmos recur? This is a scientific question. And this must be answered scientifically. You can't say, does it happen, does it not happen? You cannot just say, this is what tradition says about it. Yes, you have seen what tradition says. But does it happen according to tradition? Does it happen scientifically? Unfortunately, nobody has raised this question. And I have engaged with this question for the last 40 years or so. And the short answer is yes. It's a very simple answer. And I've been trying to explain it. As I said, I have this paper from 1979, Ancient and Modern Cosmology, which was in the proceedings of the Indian Association for General Relativity and Gravitation. It was a technical report. It's in my book, 11 Pictures of Time. And you should take a look at it. It basically has this idea. And there is a paper on Atman, quasi-recurrence and Paticca in the PHISPC and so on. But I have not succeeded, I must admit, in getting the point across. So this argument is very simple. There's something called the Poincare recurrence theorem. In Newtonian physics, I'm coming to Newtonian physics, a closed cosmos must recur infinitely often, like a gas in a box. And this theorem you'll find in any textbook on thermodynamics. That is to say, every microstate of the system must recur infinitely often to any arbitrary degree of precision, any specified precision. This is according to Newtonian physics if the cosmos is closed. That is what the Poincare recurrence theorem says. So I'm talking about it being scientific, right? And this is the case. So there is a generalized form of the Poincare recurrence theorem. You can find it in this book of mine on Time Towards a Consistent Theory. And maybe I can just show you the contents of that. So here is there's lots of stuff in there's a chapter on thermodynamic time, and that has got the Poincare recurrence theorem. It has got a proof of that in very great generality. And this is a book on physics. All right. So do take a look at it if you like. And this is not now any longer just in Newtonian physics. It will also apply to general relativity and so on. In fact, to a very general kind of dynamical system. And there is also a proof in quantum mechanics. I'm not going to go into that. All right. I just want to summarize because those are long details. They will take a lot of time. I just want to say there is such a result. And according to that result, the key conclusion is that belief in Atman or belief in related belief in repeated lives after death is not a superstition. And why hasn't somebody answered this Purva Paksha or even understood this answer? I am surprised, but anyway, that's how it is. So this is a consequence of Newtonian physics in a closed cosmos. Yeah, Newtonian physics is not the right theory, I know that. It failed long ago and it's not the right science to use. I understand that there is general relativity, there is quantum mechanics, and there is my theory and so on. But according to Newtonian physics, so we are talking about something being scientific on Popperian sense that it should be falsifiable, it should be refutable, which it is. And whether it is true according to the ultimate science is something we will look at. But this is a simple answer. It is not a superstition. And so what are the answers to skeptics? Very easy. It answers all objections. Why don't the dead return? Obviously, they cannot because it will take billions of years before they are reborn. Why don't we remember past life? Because memories come and set fresh in each cycle. Everything, your life, your memory, all events repeat. So it's like a film being replayed, and if you replay it 30 times or 29 times, the 29th time it's replayed, the hero is not going to remember that the villain betrayed him and cheated him the last time. The same sequence will go through every time. Why can't the soul be seen or weighed? Because it's an abstraction connecting one person in one cycle of the cosmos to the same person in the next or previous cycle. Just the way you are connected to yourself at the next previous instant across the diastema. So these are very simple answers. And that's what I want to conclude in part one, that there are various kinds of beliefs in life after death. And the kind of belief that you have in the Upanishad, in the Vedanta, because I think Vedanta is about the Upanishads, that's the actual belief. It involves cosmic recurrence. And because it involves cosmic recurrence, it's a completely scientific thing. It's nothing very complicated. It's a very simple theorem to prove, Poincare recurrence theorem. And you can prove it in complicated form, that's different. So it's a perfectly scientific thing, and it is also probably, very likely true, as we will see. So if the cosmos recurs, it is true. All right. So a closed cosmos must recur, that we have seen, and this answers all doubts raised by skeptics, ancient and modern. It's a full answer to the Purva Paksh, settles all the issues raised by Payasi and other skeptics about their objections to life after death, which have remained unanswered for the last 2,500 years. That's why I'm talking about science. All right. Now let me go on to the next part, which is a little more difficult. It is about moksha, and it gets progressively more difficult as we go on. This is the easiest part. So it is about, how am I doing for time? I spent 30 minutes, not bad. I have about 1 hour, right? Okay, so we have already moved one big step forward, which is that we have understood something about what Atman is, what is this belief in life after death. And we have answered that Purva Paksh. All right, but that's only the first step. It's a very complicated thing. What we have answered is just the first step, but it tells us we are on the right track. So there are different types of cosmic recurrence. Just as there are different types of life after death, there are different types of cosmic recurrence, different types of what is so-called cyclic time. So eternal or exact recurrence or Poincare recurrence is not what is required for Hinduism. It's the wrong thing. It's the wrong kind of recurrence. You don't want it. It's just to show that it is scientific, that it makes sense. It's not a superstition. So why not? Because the key requirement of Hinduism is moksha, right? You have, and it is, the requirement is, it's not just that it is stated in tradition. That is the only reasonable, desirable goal of life. If, you must want liberation from life after death, if you are repeatedly being born. And this is clarified also by the, let me go back to the Upanishad, that you are looking for moksha. right? You want to be freed from the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. And what is this Amritatva? It is clarified in the next word. And it is a very, very graphic description. It is non-death and it is freedom from rebirth. It is yoni mukta. See, you have to be born, you have to pass through the yoni, that is, you are free from that. It's a very explicit kind of description. All right. You can find that in the second part of the Bhagavad Gita. Mamupettatyu kanteya punarjanmana vidyate. You are finding me, we are no longer reborn. So that's the ultimate goal. And now you have to make sense out of that. Can you make sense out of that scientifically? That becomes the next question. First part was easy. Now we are getting into complexities. It will get more complex. So there are different types of cyclic time. All right. So Atman is a scientific notion with any kind of recurrence. But moksha is not available with eternal recurrence or Goinkara recurrence or super cyclic time, as I have called it. The whole idea of 11 pictures of time is that there are so many different pictures which you confuse with each other. You think there is only linear time and cyclic time and you make a total mess. It's very, very wrong to think like that. So that's not what you want. So moksha requires quasi-cyclic time, quasi-cyclic time, but not super-cyclic time. If you confuse the two, you are done for, finished. You will just be, it's a horrible mistake. Let me put it like that. To assert that Hinduism requires cyclic time. Horrible mistake. Okay, so why is it a horrible mistake? Let me give you an example of how you can confuse these different kinds of recurrence by confusing different types of cyclic time and referring to all of them under one name of cyclic time. So just as Pius, he confused different types of different notions of life after death and confused, made a mistake. This also happens especially by those who are under the influence of Western philosophy. And well, this is because the church cursed the notion of cyclic time in Western thought, and it sowed that seed of confusion about cyclic time very deep in Western thought. All the way from Augustine till T.S. Eliot and so on, you'll find all those quotations in my book. So there's huge confusion. But let me give a particular example of Nietzsche. Nietzsche founded his entire philosophy on eternal recurrence. He anticipated the Poinkara recurrence here, intuitively. And he was opposed to the church because he knew that the church has cursed cyclic time. He didn't know why, mistake he made. But to oppose the church, he championed cyclic time using Newtonian physics. He actually had stochasticity and so on. I don't want to go into those technical details. It was probabilistic evolution, not deterministic evolution, but that doesn't matter. He wrongly attributed this on the Aryan thesis by which he was influenced to Zoroaster, called Zarathustra. So Nietzsche's description of cosmic recurrence, what if someday a demon crept into you and told you that this life that you now live and have lived, you will have to live it again countless times again. And that there is nothing new about it. Every pain, every joy, every thought, every sigh, and everything unspeakably great or small will have to return to you, everything in the same progression and sequence. Even the spider I see, the moonlight filtered through the trees, even this moment and myself. Repeat, repeat, repeat like a stuck record. The eternal hourglass of existence will be inverted over and over again, as will you speck of dust. Would you not cast yourself on the ground, grinding your teeth together and cursing the demon who spoke to you thus? That's Nietzsche's description. It's a very accurate description, and he understood some of it, but he could not get beyond Newtonian physics. So just because liberation is impossible in an eternally recurrent cosmos, it's a nightmare. And so he advanced the doctrine of the Ubermensch, the Superman, who can get over this somehow and live life knowing this. And of course, this confusion was due to the church curse on cyclic time, because it has confused a whole lot of Western philosophers across so many, across more than 1,000 years, 1,500 years. So the non-availability of liberation with eternal recurrence was the argument used by the church to curse it. Now people say, why do you say curse? Because that is the term it used, anathema. It means the biggest possible curse. That's what it means. Check the dictionary on cyclic time. The biggest possible curse that the church could lay, it laid on cyclic time. What was his argument? He said that with eternal recurrence, Christ is repeatedly crucified in successive cycles of the cosmos. Christianity also believed in this. Hence, Christ cannot save himself. And therefore, he cannot save anybody else. How can he save the rest of humanity? So he said in City of God, heaven forbid that we should believe this, for Christ having died once for our sins, rising again, dies no more. In other words, what the church did, this was never an Abrahamic religion. It's nonsense to say it was Abrahamic. He believed this, very similar to Hinduism, or what Origen did. But then it changed. It changed for political reasons. So the church changed reincarnation to resurrection. That is life after death just once, not repeatedly. So that Christ could be saved. So you will be reborn only in heaven or hell or wherever and spend the rest of eternity there. And therefore it made the soul, the Christian notion of soul, metaphysical. So it differs from that. And it becomes metaphysical. By metaphysical, I mean scientifically meaningless. Though naturally often translate Atman as soul, because originally the concepts were similar. So the point is, if you confound different types of cyclic time, you end up with this huge confusion. The fact that early Christianity had the same notion of soul as Atman is there in this appendix to Origen, which is appendix on Origen, which looks at Origen. He was the person who actually built the Bible. Bible is built on his notes. So these are quotations from his Deep Principles, which are on my website, and you can look at them. I won't go into all those details, but it was very much there. So this was the thinking, pre-Nicene thinking, before the Nicene Council, how they think, whether it came from Hinduism or from Egypt. I believe it came from Egypt, but that's not the issue right now. But what Augustine did was he mischievously confounded two different kinds of cyclic time. And that is why, that is Augustine's trap in which everybody falls. He confound the two notions, say, oh, Hinduism has cyclic time. That's what he did. So it's a very dangerous trap to fall into. And lots of people fall into that, which I'm trying to correct. So the point is, just as there are different notions, there are radically different notions, antagonistic notions of cyclic time. If you just use the word cyclic time, you get into a complete mess. I explained that in 11 Pictures of Time. I don't think anybody has understood. It's a great disservice to Hinduism because liberation or moksha is the fundamental and ultimate requirement of Hinduism. So if you picturize it as something which does not offer liberation, you are doing a great disservice to it. Unknowingly perhaps, but you are doing it all the same. As the Jains say, whether you do it intentionally or not, doesn't matter. So what we need is quasi-recurrence, no, not eternal recurrence. So both Atman and moksha are scientifically possible if the cosmos is quasi-recurrent, but not eternally recurrent. Okay? That is to say, if time is quasi-cyclic, but not super-cyclic. Now that brings us to the next question. Is it possible for the cosmos to be quasi-recurrent but not eternally recurrent? Is it possible for time to be quasi-cyclic but not super-cyclic? And that will lead to the next question, which I summarize. Now we are getting, as you see, we are getting into deeper and deeper waters, and that is my part 3, which is looking at whether quasi-cyclic time is scientifically possible. And then you can't do that just like that. It requires major changes to both mathematics and physics if you want to. Mathematics and physics. All right, why is that? Because it involves a very major difficulty. You have to get rid of the church ideology in Western ethno-mathematics and Western ethno-science. I think those are the correct terms to use. You can't just speak of science. You have to look at it as Western ethno-mathematics and Western ethno-science. Even at the level of 1 + 1 = 2, I've given lots of lectures on that. How 1 + 1 = 2 differs in Western ethno-mathematics. Russell took so many pages, 378 pages to prove it, and nobody could prove 1 + 1 = 2 in JNU. I issued a challenge about a year ago. So the problem of eliminating that church ideology in mathematics and science, even at the level of 1 + 1 = 2, is difficult, but there are two parts to it. You have to eliminate it in mathematics, and you have to eliminate it in physics. How do you do that? It's a very deep and difficult issue. So let's start with calculus. Now, calculus, on the current Western misunderstanding of the calculus, formal real numbers are supposed to be necessary for calculus. All right. And that if you have formal real numbers, they teach in class 9 and class 10, real numbers are real lines. So if real numbers are like a line, then time also must be like a line. That's what I call superlinear line, superlinear time. You're forced into it. Why? Because you write physics in terms of differential equations. To make sense of those differential equations, you want time to be like a line. People don't understand this. They just keep saying, oh, we did calculus first, we did calculus. We didn't do it like that. So there is ideology there. Just to write down the differential equations of physics, you are forced into assuming that time must be superlinear. The second part of physics is that current physics is mechanistic. Newtonian physics is mechanistic. In fact, quantum mechanics is also mechanistic. If anybody tells you that there is human creativity there, where is the human being in the wave equation? Where is the human being in the Schrodinger equation? I mean, it is rubbish to say that there is the human creativity there, because humans are not specified in physics. So where is the level at the mundane level, you see so much of human creativity at all times. But you need to have that, because most doesn't just happen deterministically or probabilistically or whatever way. It requires human effort. And there is no possibility of human effort in present day physics. How do you bring it in? That's the question. Okay, so I don't use the term free will, because it's 1,000 years of 1,500 years of theology. You'll be trapped in that, you'll never get out of it. Therefore, I'm using the word purusharth or mundane time. That's a mundane observation. So we want the new math and physics if you want to achieve quasi-cyclic time. And that requires a deep knowledge, unfortunately, of mathematics and physics. So I can't cover it right now in 5 minutes or whatever. It will require a whole course. And but let me give you some idea that you don't get this knowledge with Sanskritists, even if they have a PhD in physics, because they will, you can't even say that we had it all along, because it's not already there. Like some people say, we had space travel, etc. We had Newtonian gravitation and so on. Newtonian physics has to be rejected. If you had it, you're finished. So the new math and physics needs to be built. So the resolution to this problem, the good news is that this has already been done, but it needs to be understood. It's a very complicated thing. So let's start with just the calculus. You need to correct the current misunderstanding of the calculus. I'm trying to do it right now. The California school system has changed their syllabus. They have cancelled the calculus. So I'm trying to explain that there's another way to do it. If you go back to the Indian way of doing it, it becomes easier, and it does not a dumbing down. So you base the calculus on the way it originated in India. I've been teaching this for the last decade that way. I performed experiments. The subtle point that the West did not understand, that Newton did not understand, is number book used polynomial arithmetic, Abhyakt Ganit. I can't go into it now. What is non-Archimedean arithmetic, etc. Please read up what I have written, for example, in the Springer Encyclopedia. What is the zeroism or shunyavad? Can't get into it. The point is that Indians did calculus. We just, so we did it first, like kids. We did it differently. You have to understand that we did it differently. We didn't just do what Newton did. Newton didn't understand the calculus. You have the courage, you have to have the courage to say that, because you don't do calculus that way today. He didn't have real numbers, he talked of fluxions and so on. So the issue is not that we did it first, that makes no difference here, because we're talking about changing it. So you can change it only if you did it differently. And we did do it differently. And this is explained in my book, especially in the second edition of this book. I'm making it very explicit, which is about to come out. There's also a French translation coming out of Cultural Foundations of Mathematics. So we did it differently. And once you do it that way, you can eliminate superlinear time. You are not forced into the requirement that just to write down a differential equation, time must be like a line. Why should you be forced in? That's metaphysics. Real numbers are metaphysics. Why should metaphysics force your physics? Just because of some ideological concern with the kind of infinity and eternity that the church has in mind. I have an article on that, on infinity and eternity. I cannot go into it right now. But the point is that the revised understanding of calculus frees us from the superlinear time of physics. That's just a short form that I'm giving. You can still use time as a parameter, that doesn't matter. Of course, it's necessary to reform the entire philosophy of mathematics, which is what I'm doing, because basically what the West did was that they stole everything and they added a layer of metaphysics based on the politics of the crusading church. People don't understand where is the politics in 1 + 1 = 2. I try to explain, but they don't know 1 + 1 = 2 in all of JNU. In real numbers, I offered a reward of 10 lakh rupees. And 1 lakh rupees, they gave their result in 1 week. I'm still willing to offer it. Again, so the point is that they don't know the Indian calculus, the Indian mathematics, arithmetic, algebra, trigonometry, probability, statistics, everything was imported from India, but a layer of metaphysics was added to it. It was written during colonialism as superior. It was not superior, it was inferior. But it served a certain political purpose. Likewise, we know that Newtonian physics has failed. Now, why has it failed? Is it just that, some Michelson-Morley experiment, something? That's not correct. I've analyzed it in my book long back, last 25, 30 years, I'm trying to explain. It failed because of internal conceptual confusion over the notion of time. I've explained this so many times. People don't understand, what can I do? If you find something wrong, please let me know. It is just that. Therefore, Newton did not have a clear concept of time. He changed the concept of time given by his predecessor, Barrow. And you need to understand why. That is why it had to fail. Because he did not define how to measure time. So God knows. But you need to know, if you want to do physics, you need a clock. He didn't define a clock. So what the theory of relativity does is that it defines the speed of light as a constant in order to create a clock. That was Poincaré's understanding. Very clear understanding. But you wrongly credit to Einstein in myths and superstitions and so many things. And you think, oh, it's such a great story. How can it be false? About science, they can be about scientists and so on. But he did not understand it. And he copied the theory from, oh my God, my internet connection is unstable. So the calculus, as with the calculus, it's a matter of understanding it, not a question of who gets the credit. All right, so he failed to understand relativity, that it forces functional differential equations for physics, because there's a time delay and so on. And he made an inexcusable mistake, simple mistake till the end of his life. He approximated functional differential equations by ordinary differential equations. You can't do that. It's a mathematical mistake. So anyway, Poincaré understood that is what has to be done, because he was the real originator. And he understood that they are fundamentally different. And of course, that is my epistemic test, that those who steal knowledge, they don't understand. But that's not important. What is important? We are talking about Vedanta. So to allow mundane creativity of living organisms, to allow spontaneity in science, you need to go beyond Poincaré. You need to talk of functional differential equations with a tilt in the arrow of time. Now, what is the tilt in the arrow of time? You need an advanced component as well as a retarded component. And this is described, well, I've been describing it for so many years. It makes me feel bad to try and describe it again. I won't do it here. All that I'm saying is that FD is with a tilt. This is still pure science. That you observe mundane creativity, you want it. But now, if the tilt in the arrow of time increases with time, it may happen, it may not happen. It is still a falsifiable belief, a refutable belief. You can perform experiments to test it. But if that happens, then you get quasi-cyclic time without exact or eternal recurrence. So it's a complex issue, and that is where it is. It is possible to get it, and that would make both of them scientifically meaningful and true if that happens. So Western ethnomathematics needs to be corrected, especially the use of real numbers in calculus. Let's see if I can succeed. Or if I don't, let it maybe. So Western ethnophysics also needs to be corrected to eliminate mechanistic physics and allow creativity to living organisms, because the West said creativity is only for God. But if you think Atman and Brahman are the same, then the creativity is inside you. Everybody can be creative. You have to accept that and you have to incorporate it into science. So the idea that till gives you spontaneity and so on, I won't go into that. It is a complex thing. So many people have got confused, Popper got confused and so on. But it allows mundane creativity. That's the summary that I wish to tell you. And you get you get what you want, quasi-cyclic time without exact or eternal recurrence. All right. Now let's go to the next part. How much time I have? About 10 minutes more. So you have to change the colonial mindset. Colonized people don't understand mathematics and science. They think that the validity is not to be decided by themselves. Some Westerner has to certify, has to approve, and then it is right. If Hawking says, Stephen Hawking says, you may be talking nonsense, but it has to be right. You have to get authoritative approval by publishing in some Western journal. Of course, the math stuff is all published there, but that's not the point. The point is there is a slavish dependence. If you are talking about something so fundamental and you are dependent on somebody else, then your truth of science and mathematics is subordinate to Western social approval. And that makes the agenda of decolonization impossible, because the agenda of decolonization can work only if you apply your own mind. West is not going to approve this change because it gets political leverage from ethnomathematics and ethnoscience. The Nobel Prize was given last year to Penrose in physics. And he is, I had a debate with him anyway, let's not go into that, let me finish this, that it's not going to allow you to have that quasi-cyclic time that you want for Vedanta or Hinduism to be scientific. You have to decide what is more important, whether the Western approval that is important, then go get it, stop talking about this. You can't get both. Let's be very clear about it. And if you have the illusion that you can get, keep trying. So you can't do it because you have the sense of inferiority. What you do is inferior. What those guys did, something superior. They give you some false history. You believe it, like Newton invented calculus and so on. So we need to understand that the West systematically promoted racism based on that and so on. And the counter to that is not to promote one's own false history. Oh, we had this, we had that. We can also tell lies. Yes, but nobody is going to believe you. You don't have that propaganda. You don't control Wikipedia and so on and so forth. So what you need to do is to replace false history with truth, which you can defend. Doesn't matter if nobody believes you. At least some people are smart enough. Everybody in the world is not a fool. As I said, you can't fool all people all the time. So that will be good enough. So the point is that the church curse on cyclic time, it creates a conflict with Vedanta, and authoritative social approval will never come. And you need to get rid of that Western church ideology in which pervades Western ethnomathematics and science, and this consciously influences science at the highest level. I have an article on this. It is there in mainstream. It's called A Singular Nobel, and it's a very long article on what is wrong with what Penrose did and why he should not have got the Nobel Prize. But anyway, he's got the Nobel Prize, so there is nothing to be done about it. I can't discuss it. It is there. Please read it. It's available online. And the Indians living in the West can't do it, and the Indian government won't do it. You know, it appointed Manjul Bhargava for its new education policy. He's a formal mathematician. So this ensures they know you give a prize of $1,500, and Indians will just fall over everywhere and change their entire syllabus, change their mathematics syllabus. And this was done. It was also given to an Iranian. obviously done for propaganda purposes, but we don't understand that. So the Indian way of changing, the Indian way of teaching calculus will not happen in our universities. It has not happened. I don't think it will happen. It forces superlinear time, and that's it. So, let's see what happens in the California State Board. So you do what you like. It does not matter to me. Just don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me go teach in a Gurukul to keep it alive. Why should it be kept alive? Let it die with me. What is important about keeping it alive? And why should it be my duty to keep it alive? I have tried to explain. If people are not able to understand, I think that's their problem. And don't give me advice, because if you don't have you could not address that Purva Paksh for so long, you don't need to give me advice. You need to think, do some introspection of what happened. So after 8 years, I predicted that the Indian government is not going to change the syllabus, and that's exactly what happened. You can't do it even on a trial basis. You're afraid to try. In a university, it's so easy to have a course. So easy, you don't dare to do it. So I think that it will not happen. And pedagogical demonstrations have been done. They have been done in Malaysia and so on. So let this knowledge go elsewhere, or you can be proud later. We had it first. So for those who still are interested, you can read my books or let this knowledge die. Now, I just want to say that possible in principle, but it is impossible, nearly impossible in practice. In India, it may happen in Africa, it may happen in China. I don't see it happening in India. So the conclusion is just a question mark. There's no conclusion. It's a political struggle. The outcome is uncertain. And those who are happy to remain mental slaves of the best, they don't need to be spoon-fed knowledge of eternal revelation. Last point I want to make. I still have 5 minutes, 7 minutes. What difference does it make if Atman and Moksha are scientific beliefs? What difference does it make to my everyday life? And the answer is that it makes the related ethics credible, even to the non-believer, even to the Gnostic. So I explained that, and I have a long paper on it called the Harmony Principle. It is in Philosophy East and West. It's not coming up. Here it is. So it's called the Harmony Principle. It tries to explain this and so on. And the basic idea is that you need to live so as to increase harmony in the cosmos. Now, do I have some more time, or would there be questions or something? Are there questions, or should I just complete
We normally
this?
don't have questions for plenary sessions, but depending on when you finish it, we might.
There are no questions, is it? You don't allow questions.
We normally don't have questions, but if you leave some time, we will ask.
Anyway, then let me complete. I'm just saying that there is survival ethics, everyday life. What you do is you look for status, territory, and so on, and that is based on survival. Whereas with moksha, you're looking for just the opposite, abandon the world. So it is not straightforward that this ethics is credible. So the ethics which would be abandoned instead, and your Shabda Praman has limited credibility. And so the two ethics need to be reconciled, what you go with naturally and what is being said here. Unless you can reconcile it, it's the ethics which would be abandoned. And well, there is a long analysis. Why exactly do living organisms want to survive? And there is no explanation for it in the theory of evolution. Just assume it's most natural that people want to survive. And there is no possibility for creative and non-random evolution. So I think the point is that this conflict is there, and the idea is that ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to increase harmony in the cosmos. Maybe I'll stop and I will take, against your tradition, I will take a few questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Raju. It's as usual.
There are some things in the chat.
There is one or two questions in the chat. That one of them is just to explain something.
I can't hear what you're saying.
You cannot hear me?
I'm not able to hear.
How about other people? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear.
Okay.
Yes, we can
I
hear.
can hear you. I can hear you.
See if he can.
Maybe I should. Not able to hear. There is one question. Do I have some followers for this channel of perception?
Well, let me
Yes,
read.
there are
Let me read the
followers who follow,
question.
they follow simple things. And what they follow are things like the issue of the calendar and so on and so forth. But there are followers, especially in Africa, they are willing to accept that there is, you see, by the way, the Egyptian thought and Indian thought are very similar. And mathematics is also similar to, for example, string geometry or Raju Ganit is similar to what they have. So, so I do have some followers, but there's another question. What is that? Quasi-cyclic time as the possibility of individual liberation. Are you talking of a relative time? What I'm talking about is spontaneity. That if you allow advanced interactions, if you allow interactions with the future, then this is going to result in spontaneity. See, suppose you have time travel. Imagine, I mean, look at the what is called the grandfather paradox. As a physicist, you should understand that. Grandfather paradox, suppose the time travel arrives here right now. How do you explain it from past causes? You are not able to explain it from past causes. Otherwise, you don't need the idea of a person coming from the future. So the cause is in the future. So maybe you should take a look at my paper on time travel and the reality of spontaneity. And there is also an article on that in physics education on time travel and light. So the spontaneity is very confusing because Popper got confused. His Mont paradox, he wrote half a dozen papers in Nature long back in the 50s. And they were all confused on this issue. And he agreed that he was confused. Well, he didn't agree he was confused. He said he would answer. He agreed that my arguments were strong, but he didn't have an answer. Is there any other question?
Yeah, I just wrote one, but I'm not sure whether you're able to hear me.
Further explanation of both Atman and Moksha. I explained it in such great detail that Atman is scientific because it is refutable, it is falsifiable. We are talking of cosmic recurrence. According to tradition, your life after death is in the context of cosmic recurrence. And now I am saying the next part of it is that you don't just want any kind of life after death, you want some possibility of creative intervention in the world, because it is meaningless to say Atman is Brahman unless you can create. And how do you create? So you need a different kind of physics and you need a different kind of quasi-cyclic time, which allows both things to happen. So not only is it scientific in the sense of being refutable, it is scientific in the sense of being very likely true. More questions. Okay.
So Balram Singh, can I ask a question?
Okay, does consciousness, I don't know what consciousness
It seems
is.
he's not able to hear, so you
Yes,
can
please.
just write it. He's not able to hear.
I can't
Professor
hear you.
Ravi,
I
can
can't hear anybody for some reason.
Yeah, so just write
Maybe
it. I suggest
my
everybody please just
audio
write it.
sound settings have gone wrong. One second.
Professor Kaushal, please
Sound
write it.
settings.
And he is able
Something
to
has
read
happened to
it.
the sound settings.
I'm not very good in writing chat box.
Well, I will write it for you. Say what you want
Yeah,
to say. I will
just a
write
minute.
it.
Yeah,
Just a
actually-
minute. Sound is okay. Output device is not working. There's a problem at your
He
end.
can't hear me. He's out of
Professor Ram
control.
Singh,
Okay, let's
yeah,
go
please
back to
write
the
it.
computer.
I
Speaker.
believe that it is consciousness which creates
I'm
space
still
and
not
time.
able to hear. 1 minute. Not able to hear. Yes, please try again.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now I can hear. Okay. Microphone got
Mr.
switched off.
Raju.
Yeah. Hi.
Raju, I hope you remember, I'm from Delhi University. We met once
Yeah.
upon a time in,
Yes.
you were in the, CDC.
Yes.
So my question is that it is consciousness which creates space and time. On the other hand, you are using the same concept of time while talking about moksha or any other spiritual process. So how do you justify?
I don't know what consciousness is. What is your consciousness? How does it create space and time?
Only a conscious person can say that this is the space-time concept. Dead
That's a
body
tautology.
cannot.
That's an axiom. That's a
So
tautology.
consciousness creates
That is
space
your
and time.
statement. That's your statement. If you are not conscious, will space and time stop existing?
Then question comes at cosmic
Hey, I
time
don't.
or cosmic consciousness
Let us agree
and
to
local
disagree on
time
that.
or local. Yeah.
We have agreed to disagree for the last 30 years. Let us continue to disagree. There's another question here. Amba gets reborn as Shikhandi with the sustained purpose. Yes, that is popular Hinduism. I agree that popular Hinduism is a bit different from Vedantic Hinduism, Upanishadic Hinduism. And so I would, yes, I think that the distinction needs to be sorted out, because in the Upanishads, there is no such thing of, the whole idea that you have karma sanskar, but, exactly how it works out in this way is not quite clear. It is not very clearly stated, and I don't know how that would happen. So does that, okay, Kathopanishad. No, the words are there. The word Narak is there in Kathopanishad. Word Swarg is there, but it is not that it is the same thing as the Mahabharata concept of the word of the two. It is no, there is no description that this torture is taking place. Look at Dante's description of hell. That does not exist. And nowhere have I seen such a description in the Upanishads. The word is there does not mean the concept is there. What it means.
all right. Well,
What
thank
is
you.
the difference between, yeah, okay, right.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Raju. As usual, your presentations are full of provocative observations. It will be always good to continue this discussion. You raised many issues of theology and the fundamental aspects and assumptions of mathematics that have been originated elsewhere. And you brought the idea of Vedanta and especially the Mahayuga and other things. And they all really, each one of your presentation, each one of your slides, actually, I would say that will be taking our presentation to discuss. I did raise a question as to, maybe similar to Professor Kaushal, as to the consciousness. Does consciousness do these things mathematically? Even though maybe the time and other thing, it does really, is the mathematics work there or not?
I don't understand consciousness. What I can talk about is the link between physical and biological evolution.
Okay, please do that. Yeah.
Okay, that I have.
What is the difference?
So if you are allowing spontaneity in physics, then you can have creative evolution. I raised that point that it is not necessary. May I complete responding to him?
Please go ahead.
So the idea is that in Darwin's theory, mutations take place at random. They are not creative mutations. So the giraffe gets a long neck not because the entire species of the giraffes desired to grow a longer neck and they became tall. It just happened and the others got eliminated, and so on. So this is all right at the level of bacteria and so on, but I don't really see that this necessarily works there. It need not. I mean, you can have a physics, once you have a creative physics, it is going to affect the evolution of biological organisms. In fact, I want to study this issue, and I am studying this issue, and maybe sometime I'll come out the statement, let me put very clearly, is as follows. If you have got functional differential equations with deviating arguments, then order can be created faster than it can be created with stochastic differential equations. Probabilistic differential equations can also create order, but it will take a much longer time to do so than if you have this. So that's a very clear statement I am putting forward. Now I can, whether how it is to be tested and so on, this is something that would have to be worked out, because see, biological organisms from the point of view of physics are very complicated. Even the simplest molecules are very complicated. And I have been planning to do this. Professor Kaushal, you have something to say?
Yeah, see, you can as well define a meditation variable, because intense meditation does lot of wonders in occult sciences. So meditation variable you can define and use, instead of time, use meditation variable and let there be a different, that thing has been done in coming book of mine. Actually. So,
very good. We have done
it is
it. So why are you
psychoscience I
asking
have
me
developed
to answer
all
the
throughout
question?
these years. So
Okay, thank you.
GK Print World is publishing that.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great.
You answer
I
it.
will
I don't
contact
have
you
an
on email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think we need to continue this kind of discussion. What I think my last observation about Professor Raju's explanation about physical versus biological, somebody who works in biophysical area, the biological mutations are also caused by physical phenomena. So there may be, that's why I was very interested, because the mutations about the DNA turning into one base to another base is something to do with how the circularly polarized light interacts with the nucleotides and their dipole moments and other things. So I think that may be a great understanding of this, because I like your idea.
I'm talking of creative evolution.
Yeah,
I'm
no, I understand. I understand.
Apart from randomness, if a particle radioactive decay and some particle energetic particle hits it and changes it, that is one sort of thing. But a creative evolution to increase order is a different proposition.
Right,
that's
right. But I think it's a good idea to continue this kind of discussion, and I think we did almost done with our time. So I really want to profusely thank you for bringing this kind of discussion. You at least give the whole array of information that people should consider, and many of those ideas you have already considered in your books and articles, and they should be debated, they should be even questioned. And I think you are one of those persons who have always welcomed that, and that's a wonderful thing to do. And I really admire your passion for this. And thank you very much for coming to the Vedanta Congress and making this presentation. Thank you so much. And I'd like to now invite Professor Girish Najha to take over to this next session, the session number 16, I think.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Balramji. Thank you for leading the session so nicely, previous one. And I now invite all my presenters for the 16th session today. And these are Kavindra Rishi, Jeffrey Armstrong. He is going to speak on the Vedantic discourse and the linguistic distortions from English language.
Kavindra Rishi ko dekh lo tab.
Hello.
Yeah, he is here.
Right. So this topic certainly will be very interesting to me. But looks like a lot of linguistics going to be over there. And the second speaker is Raj Kumar. He is going to speak on Vedic theories of creation. And then we have Lalit Pandey, is our old student from the School of Sanskrit and Indic Studies. आधुनिक परिप्रेक्ष्य में आयुर्वेद सम्मत शाला की तंत्रोक्त नेत्र चिकित्सा विज्ञान. And then you will have Kanika Saraf. She's going to speak on what's Patanjali and Advaita Vedanta, re-evaluating Samadhi in the Yoga Sutra. Again, a very interesting topic. And then we have Annie Melfi. She'll be speaking on the power of affect in the Vedantic pedagogy. And the last speaker would be Anushita Mandal. She was our old student from JNU, and she did MPhil here. She's doing teaching in Kolkata in the Sanskrit College. So she'll be speaking on the Vedanta thought and the Brahmachari in the modern education. So I once again invite all the presenters. And the first of all, Jeffrey Armstrong. He is the well-known founder of the Vedic Academy of Sciences and Arts and an award-winning author of numerous books of Vedic knowledge, including spiritual treatises of the Avatar. Armstrong is an Ayurvedic astrologer, and I have had so many interactions with him. He's been almost a regular speaker in our Vedic Vedanta conferences, and a very interesting person, a very, very eminent astrologer of Canada. So Ayurvedic astrologer, philosopher, practitioner, and the teacher of the Vedas for over 40 years, with degrees in psychology, history, and comparative religions and literature. He's also had a successful career as an executive in Silicon Valley and as corporate speaker for Fortune 500 companies before turning to teaching the philosophy and lifestyle of yoga full-time. Lives in Vancouver, BC. So I now invite Jeffrey Armstrong. Please, Jeffrey, take over and do your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Girish ji and Alram ji, for all the incredibly amazing effort that you put in to make this historical event possible. I think we're so used to technology, we can think, oh, this is normal. This is not the normal we have known forever. This is a new normal, and it's quite remarkable. It's a sadhu sangha carried across the frequencies and waves and circling the planet, which gives us a certain hopefulness that the possible dangers of technology could move us in a direction of being connected with one another and yet not necessarily be destructive to our planet and our entire civilization. I always begin, Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, because I have been so fortunate this lifetime as to have transferred my affiliation from one civilization, Western civilization, and all of its splendid chaos and violence, and occasionally beauty and amazing discoveries, over to the Vedic Vidya. And in particular, then, this makes me a specialist in the process of bringing the Sanskrit Vidya into the English language, which is a chaotic and turbulent and irregular language. That's our topic for today. And I have most recently done a translation of the Bhagavad Gita, not because we needed another commentary. All the great acharyas have already preceded me done that. And so what I could see was that the conversation about the Vedic Vidya has to proceed in a certain way. It has to be calm. It can't be an argument and in the wrong tone of voice. It needs to address the human issues as people are experiencing them around us. I invented a term a while back that if the Abrahamic religions are the people of a book, then we in the Vedic culture are the people of a library. Now, that's the good news. So then I will say to the Abrahamics, who of course are friends of mine, then I would say, I've read your book. Have you read our library? But it's not fair to say, go read the whole library in Sanskrit. So we need a few lead texts which lead the way and which allow us to keep the conversation, you might say, steady and not chaotic. So the Prasthana Traya Vedanta are the 10 principal Upanishads, the Vedanta Sutras of the Vyasa, and the Bhagavad Gita. So in this translation of the Bhagavad Gita, I have not put a commentary. I have simply translated the verses. And the process that I undertook is what we're discussing today. And it is how to bring the significant points of the Vedantic understanding into English without the English obstructing the process and without degenerating into a chaos of misunderstanding and confusion because of the irregularity of English. But just a historical note, the poet Chaucer and then later Shakespeare were both aware that within 200 years of writing their poetry, no English speaker would be able to read their poetry because the English language was morphing and changing at such an intense rate. This remains true, and it's the fundamental question, really, that the Vedantic knowledge, the Veda, has been written down in Sanskritam. And because of the 6 Veda Angas, Jyotish, for the high end of the discussion of karma, and then Kalpa at the bottom end for the discussion of what really is ecology. It is the rituals of relationship between the humans and matter. This word ritual was poisoned by the colonizers, pointing to the Agnihotra Yagya and saying this primitive, pagan, etc., etc., etc. But in fact, the Agnihotra Yagya is a part of a reciprocity between the laws of nature and the humans living on Matabhumi, and that kalpa is our equivalent of scientific standards. If we didn't have pipes and electric wires and things to a certain common standard, we couldn't use the energy we have and pass it from house to house. So kalpa and Jyotish, very interestingly, are where the tires hit the pavement and where the cause and effect is in its about to be passed down stage with the grahas. So if you have that in mind, in between, there are 4 sciences: Shiksha, Vyakarana, Nirukta, and Chandas. Essentially, the science of etymology, the roots of words, the grammatical rules of Sanskritam, Ashtadhyaya Panini, 4,000 grammatical rules, give or take. My professor of Sanskrit had memorized them all. That's Pandita. I'm just a beginner. And then the correct pronunciation of the Sanskrit so that the vibratory effects are also a part of the transmission, which is very crucial. And then, of course, the poetry, the chandas that is necessary for it to be memorized and passed forward. So with those, we see the perfection of Sanskrit, and we do not see that with any other language on our planet. So in any discussion about this, I simply say, there is no other historical language existing now on our planet with literature that has those 4 safeguards to make sure that the knowledge is passed forward without what linguists call linguistic drift. There's even a slang saying in English, do you get my drift? Do you get the drift of what I'm saying? Because English is not precise in most cases, or let's say it fluctuates between the Latin that it was based on and the German and other languages. But at any moment, the English can slip away from us. But Sanskrit doesn't do that. Sanskrit does not slip away from us and drift over time. But what it does do is it has many levels of meaning. Now, when we're trying to explain the Vedic Vidya to those who don't understand it yet, there's a ritual, a procedure, in my opinion. So let's imagine that there are 3 problems. The first is historical. As I listened to our last speaker, I felt the intensity of someone from a colonized culture that is a brilliant civilization trying to extricate itself from the many attacks that had taken place over the last several hundred years. So let me just say this one thing first as I go into the linguistics. I believe we're at a very important moment in history where the Abrahamic religions, especially Islam and Christianity, have to say some of our followers went very, very wrong, became violent, aggressive, burned libraries. I think that's the symbol. As I said, if we're the people of a library, then certain groups of Islam and Christianity became the people who were library burners. Now, this is not all the innocent Muslims and Christians. They're just people and they have a sincere belief, and I honor all of them and they're my friends. But I'm pointing to the historical event. Those book burnings symbolize the frustration and fear of having a library of knowledge that is trying to explain our existence. So I would like to put forward to everyone that Vedanta resolved that in the context of the library by having the Acharya's comment on the 10 principal Upanishads, the Vedanta Sutras of Vyasa, which you may remember were written down during the time of Bhagavan Sri Krishna's avatar, shortly thereafter. And those texts, the Gita, of course, included, the Gita is kind of the user's manual. So in my opinion, if you really wish to simplify and yet not lose anything in the process of explaining the Veda to people who don't yet know about it, just get a reliable version of the Bhagavad Gita, one that doesn't make it complicated and that can be explained to someone else, 701 verses. It was designed to make the key principal points of the Vedic civilization and its viewpoint understandable. Now, with that, what obstructs this is the question. So one thing is talking too fast. So please don't. Slow down. And then we have to address the first problem. During the colonization by Christianity, they inserted their own vocabulary of English words, God, soul, sin, heaven, hell, etc., Lord, into the discussion and imposed them upon the conversation of the Vedantic meaning. And this remains to this day. You hear people all the time say, I'm very spiritual. Well, I'd like to ask the audience right now to just tell me in a few words what the word spiritual means. Now, don't unmute, but I'd like you to think, what is the literal definition of spiritual? And I'll tell you, it means to breathe, spiritus. And that's why aspiration, inspiration, respiration, perspiration, all have to do with breathing. But as far as meaning, there is no meaning to the word spiritual. It's used as an opposite to religious, meaning bound by a book of rules, re ligare. So if you use the word spiritual trying to describe the meanings of the Veda, you will fail miserably. It has no correlation to the Veda. It has no meaning of its own. It's a slang, empty word used in the English language. And yet, unfortunately, it's in almost every translation of the Vedas that's taken place, along with another word. And I'm just giving you a couple of examples of the problem words. The next one is God. Now, this one, if I say, please tell me what God means, you will not give me a dictionary definition. You will give me an abstract definition that is your version in English, and you will start telling me something, but there is no agreed upon definition in the dictionaries. What dictionaries? Okay, now I need to make a quick distinction for you. In English, there are two kinds of dictionaries. Usage dictionaries, which explain the way words are used every day, the everyday meaning of the words. That's the dictionary that everyone looks at. And by the way, did you know dictionary is a Sanskrit word? Well, isn't it giving diksha? How interesting. And if you receive diksha from the dictionary, and you know many, many words, you'd have a very large what? Vocabulary? Saraswati? Vach? So underneath Latin and Greek is Sanskrit. Permeating English are Sanskrit words which are not yet recognized. And as I continue now, so the word God explained in a usage dictionary would say something about the theology of the supreme being and something like that. No real definition, just throw some words at it. In that direction though, pointing up. The word God in an etymological dictionary, a proper etymological dictionary, traces a word back to its source. So a proper etymological dictionary will say, this word in English, let's use God, means da 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 da. Then it went back to Latin and meant this, Deus. And then it went back to Greek and it was this. And then where? Now, this is very important. There's an Oxford etymological dictionary, but it does not go back to the Sanskrit in most cases. And hasn't this been, and isn't it the big debate? That if Sanskrit is the mother language, which it irrevocably has now been proven to be, and the most perfect language, which as I began with, it is, then it preceded Greek, preceded Latin, and certainly preceded all the chronology of Western civilization and the Abrahamic religions. All of them are post-Sanskrit. And that Sanskrit was passed up and down the Silk Road for many, many thousands of years before the rest of our civilizations took place. Now, back to the word God. In an etymological dictionary, it will say, well, the English word God came from the Dutch word gut. And the Dutch word gut came from the German word Gutam. And the German word Gutam, ready, came from Brahmarpanam, Brahma Agna, Brahma Hutam. Occurs 4 times in the Bhagavad Gita. The smoke arising from the Agnihotra Yajna. When we place the offering in the mouth of Agni, Svaha, that Hutam is the origin of the Christian one and only word for the Supreme Being, God. Now, isn't this beautifully ironic? I mean, just sit with this and laugh for a moment. You should really be laughing and going, wow. The know-it-all religion that says we're the only one and we know everything stole a word from Sanskrit, but doesn't want to talk about Sanskrit. So the Oxford Etymological Dictionary doesn't talk about this. They don't want you to know it. But there are a few etymological dictionaries that did take the trouble to go all the way back. They weren't stuck in that mindset. So God is not, first of all, a meaningful English word in that it has drifted away from its meaning altogether. But as a word, it does have meaning. And the word is in Sanskrit, and the meaning is hutam, the smoke arising from a Vedic yajna. Now, you'll notice that in almost every English translation of the Bhagavad Gita, the word Bhagavan has been replaced by the English word God. So I want to bring this to your attention as the all-pervasive problem still in almost all Vedic translations of text is that they are using words like God, sin, religion, our Hindu religion. It's not a religion, it's a dharma. Don't say that. Our spiritual conclusion. No, you don't mean spiritual. You mean the conclusion of Vedanta is Brahman. You don't mean spiritual. You don't mean religion. There's not sin in the Vedas. Sin is an English word that's derived from the word is, because if you're a Christian, because you exist, you're a sinner. So S-I-N is with the negative N put on it. The word Lord is an English word from Haflard and Haflady in Middle English, and it meant the lord and lady who owned the land, and they would pay the servants working on the land in bread. So it's loaf lord. Lord is Haflard, and a Middle English word that means the one who bakes the bread is the Haflady, and the one who distributes it to the servants or slaves, indentured servants, is the Haflard. And of course, the favorite prayer of Christianity is the Lord prayer, give us this day our daily bread. Now, I could go on, but we don't have time. So the first step in decolonizing all translations of Vedic texts is do not use these colonizing Christian terms, which were inserted into the Vedic discussion by force or because there was no choice. So they need to be removed. And this is one of the purposes for which I am working. And that is to make it clear to everyone, you have to decolonize your language in order to explain the Veda and the Vedanta, the conclusion. And to not get lost in the ambiguities of English or to be working for your colonizers. So we're in a transition right now, a renaissance of Vedic thought, going away from the colonizing period. So the first thing, and your children will not be able to do this in school if you don't help them do it. And if we don't help them to learn how to do this, they'll remain lost. And if they're lost, they can't control the conversation. And I don't mean by shouting, I mean by speaking clearly and by introducing Sanskrit words. So step one of the process I'm describing to you is remove all colonizing terms, no exceptions. Just remove them. From whatever is your favorite translation, go through with a pen and strike out all the English words that should never have been there. Now there'll be holes in the text. So this is the next point. The Sanskrit terminology. Words exist in Sanskrit that do not exist in any other language. These words are not just words, they're the Akshar Brahman. I know you know this, so I don't have to go in detail. They're chunks of Brahman. This is the meaning of the Sanskrit. It's not just a language. It can be spoken, but it's actually bits of Brahman landing here within Prakriti. And those chunks of Brahman are the key to Veda, because Veda means Videya, it's idea, it's the video. You know that the English word video comes from Veda. But when do you hear someone from India saying this to the whole world? Say, hey folks, what you call video is a word that came directly from the word Veda, and it means that which allows you to see. Okay, so first problem, get rid of the colonizing words. Second problem, start using a few Sanskrit words, not too many, enough that you can describe realities that cannot be described in English. Cannot. Prakriti, Brahman, Atma. There are no synonyms. Now, I just need to point something out here. Recently, my dear friend and someone I admire so greatly, Rajiv Malhotraji, put out a book called Non-Translatables. And he did a marvelous job of opening the conversation. But he also did something that is an inevitable part of not knowing English well enough. So I'm going to say two things. One must know Sanskrit well enough, and then they must know the problems in English well enough. So translation is Latin, translatio. It means to carry across. So just think, we're trying to carry across the Vedic meanings into English. Then the next thing to ask is, are there equivalent Sanskrit and English synonyms? It's called synonymity. Are there direct synonyms in English? And this is what Rajiv meant to say, it's what he was trying to say, that there are no equivalent words in English to act as synonyms when you do a translation. There is no word for Atma in English. And soul has a different meaning. It's a Christian term, and it does not have the same meaning as Atma at all. It means a little son, but that's not the real meaning of Atma, is it? So in order to teach the Vedas, we must take a certain number of Sanskrit words and teach them as a part of the conversation. If we don't sit down and patiently do that and give the listener a vocabulary of Sanskrit words, then you cannot explain the Veda. So in the Gita, what we did was we put about 100 Sanskrit words and left them in the verses in translation with a glossary of 100
Jeffrey,
or so.
hello. Can you please conclude? You have shortage of time, please.
Have I done 20 minutes?
Yeah, you're done 20 minutes.
Sorry?
Yes,
20 minutes
20
are over.
minutes. You are done with, you have taken 20 minutes, Kavindraji.
It's
Time is
already more
cruel.
than that. Yeah.
All right. So 3 things need to be done to summarize. First, remove the colonizing terms. Second, include the Sanskrit words that have no synonym in English. And third, clarify the English using an etymological dictionary so the words you use in translation do not create further problems and misunderstandings. When that happens, then the translation, the transmission takes place. We are at a juncture when this is the next mandatory step, or we will lose the Hindu youth and we will not educate the hundreds of millions of new yogis throughout the world. So these 3 processes, clean up, use the Sanskrit, and clarify the English. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for highlighting a very important point, the mistakes made by the 18th century Indologists and thereafter in consciously or unconsciously mistranslating Sanskrit words, keywords in getting to what is called a workable translation of Sanskrit texts of culture. And that has created all the problems. So thank you so much for bringing in the idea of non-translatable Sanskrit words and the history of Sanskrit language and the maintenance of Sanskrit texts over 7,000 years or so. And English is not able to maintain its vocabulary, language, because it's changing very fast. All those issues are rather well known. And the Indo-European connection that you highlighted, Sanskrit being the oldest language, older than certainly Greek, Latin, and Persian. And a lot of words from Sanskrit flowing into all these languages, and not only words, but also the verb roots and concepts, etc. So thank you so much for highlighting that. And I'm sure your work will prosper with time, and we should be able to collaborate on that aspect much, much deeper. Thank you so much once again, Jeffrey. And now I see there's no question actually for you. So we will then wait if there is a question. Here, there's a question from Pawan. Professor Pawan Dhar. I'm wondering if there are any experiments that connect the sound signature of words with an impact on human mind. If you can answer that, if you can answer that very briefly, that'd be great.
Well, this is the area of science that I think we should stay away from at first. But the question is important because it's about the effect of mantras, manas trayate. And this is a significant and very important part of our discussion, but one we have to be very careful. There is no discussion whether or not sound vibrations affect human beings. They clearly do. The psychosomatic and the physiosomatic relationships are obvious. But the question of what exactly they do is one that is more difficult to explore. On a subjective level, the whole point of the Vedic Vidya is that one has several experiences, one of which is meaning, the other of which goes beyond meaning to direct experience of a reality that is beyond the simply physical. And that aspect of the conversation is, you might say, that it's the next part of the conversation once we've established the vocabulary. Because the person, and this is what the proper guru does, they give you the vocabulary, they teach you the mantras, they initiate you into the mantras, you experience the effect. And after all, there's something in our human experience that we will never be able to prove. It is proven to us by experiencing it. So that's an important question, but be careful not to confuse the two or you'll get the listener lost again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pavanji, there have been some work. Actually, there's an NBRI, National Brain Research Institute. You can also look up for that and on Devanagari's impact and all that. So a lot of gray areas in CogSci. We can discuss offline sometime. Yeah, so the next paper is from Mr. Raj Kumar, and he's going to present Vedic theories of creation. So Raj Kumarji, please take over and make a presentation. Is Raj Kumarji there?
Can you please allow me to share my screen?
Okay, just a second, Raj Kumar. So let me.
I'll do that. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, please. The host can do it. Host can make him the co-host.
Okay, that's all set.
Can you see my screen? Can my slides are visible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Girish ji, Dr. Singh, for accepting my paper for this conference. So today I am going to present about Vedic theories of creation. This presentation is in continuation of my earlier talk in Vedanta conference 2017, where the title of my presentation was Vedic Perspective in Origin of Life and Universe. So in summary, in that talk, I covered evolution, framework of evolution, concept of reality, why universe is egg-shaped, manifestation of Purusha, rotation of universe, and the comparison of Big Bang, steady state, and Vedic theory. So I will elaborate some of these concepts in today's presentation. So for outline of today's presentation is just the introduction of the topic, and then the Vedic perspective about creation. And then I will talk about the concept of Purusha, Prakriti, and Kapila's views on creation. And then finally, I will describe the Vedic model and my final interpretation on this thing. So the fundamental questions for all of us, for not only for the scientists, but from all wakes of life and all field of education, they all have wondered why the universe exists, why universe, where did this universe come from, what is the ultimate goal of this, all these, and where did we come from? But nobody has answered, including the as far as my understanding, Veda also gives some theory, but they have not having a conclusive answer for any of these problems. So it's a kind of a continuing quest for the human race to find out this answer. But they have some direction, including the modern science and Veda. They have some direction to answer these questions. So I will present in my presentation, I will present some of those aspects. So as we all know that the universe consists of particles, quarks, leptons, which develops into layer of structures. And these structures are held together by known and unknown forces. Known forces are weak and strong forces, whereas the unknown forces are the dark energy or the dark manifested forces, which is from the dark energy. So let's see the view of the modern science about this. So I took a quote from a famous theoretical physicist, Stephen Hawking, where he wrote that if Euclidean space-time stretches back to infinite imaginary time, or else start at a singularity, in imaginary time. We have the same problem as in the classical theory of specifying the initial state of the universe. God may, I highlighted that God may know how the universe began, but we cannot give any particular reason for it began one way rather than the other. And this is the same view what Nasadina Sutta is telling us, that nobody knows how universe comes and it's existing. But Vedic theory starts with the concept of Hiranyagarbha. Hiranya means the golden and Gar means the egg, it's a golden egg. So it described in Matsya Purana, which gives an initial account of creation. After Mahapralaya, the great dissolution of universe, there was a darkness everywhere. Everything was in a state of sleep. There was nothing either moving or static. Then Swambhu self-manifested being arose, see, which is a form beyond senses. It created the primordial water first and established the seed of creation into it. The seed turned into a golden womb, Hiranyagarbha. This is the basic concept of Hiranyagarbha. But the one word which it says that the primordial water is nothing but it's termed in Veda as a Salila, and I think the Salila is nothing but a space time. So there are also another term for Salila is Apa, which is also used several places in Veda and other ancient texts in place of Salila. But there is a fundamental difference in this, that the Salila is a very delicate balance of fundamental forces of nature, homogeneous state of a space-time, whereas Apa is an inhomogeneous space of time, state of a space-time, indicating this balance of fundamental force of nature. I will, in my other slide, you will see what is the relevance of these two, this delicate balance and the inhomogeneous state. So it's written in Satpat Brahmanan also that Apa was indeed Salila earlier, desired arose in it, they labored, from that heat arose, from heat golden egg was born, golden egg was swimming in that for a year. So when I talk about the space time as a Salila, so therefore Salila must be referring something. So this flat space time indicates something. For example, if the positive curvature of a space time is there, that means the universe is a closed system and it results in a spherical universe. Whereas the negative curvature of a space time indicates universe is an open system. It resulted in the inverted U-shaped universe. But whereas the flat space time, according to Veda, that exists at the beginning, so that indicates that the universe is a mixed system. So what is the consequence of the mixed system? So in the beginning, as I said, that the universe may start as a mixed system. Flatness of a space-time indicates equilibrium between all the fundamental forces. So, but to define the more between the delicate balance or inhomogeneous state of universe, Veda also gave this theory of the concept of Martyanda, which is in the beginning the force of expansion and contraction were in a delicate balance. According to Vedic view, after an initial expansion, the universe start to contract. Initially, the fundamental forces are not fine-tuned for the creation of the universe, and that's called Martyanda. So there are reference for this, that the strength of fundamental forces were adjusted during initial expansion and contraction, and then universe start to expand again, and this state is referred to as a vivasana. So So how this Martanda, after getting the right kind of balance in different kind of forces, how it start evolving our universe. So there is a concept of Purusha and Prakriti, and due to their interaction, uh, um, universes start evolving. So the building blocks of universe is, there are three building blocks: uh, essence, energy, and matter. Essence is nothing but the energy at rest, and energy is termed as a energy in motion, and matter is termed as a transformation of the energy, and that whole things is defining the Prakriti. So here it is getting more clear when in Sankhya it is written Satvar Jastamsam Samya Avastha Prakriti. So here they talk about that building block of universe is Sattva. Sattva is a root word. Root word is Sat, meaning eternally present. Rajasa, root word is Ranj, and meaning to move. And Tamsam, root word is Tam, meaning inclination toward transformation or change. So that's how if they when they start working together, that's the nature of the Prakriti. So but there is another reference about Prakriti is Jada. Jada means inert. Inert. So it's kind of a contradictory that if something is inert, then how it can move or how it can make a transformation of change. To answer this question, they develop Veda develop a concept of Purusha. So and its whole definition of Purusha is given in Yajur Veda, hymn number 31:1 to 31:12. The whole definition of Purusha is given, which basically means that which lies throughout the cosmos, that is exists engulfing and pervading the whole system. So now how Purusha activates Prakriti. So Purusha consists of 5 Tanmatras and Panch Mahabhutas. So Tanmatras are which help Prakriti to present its manifestation, and Panch Mahabhuta which helps in creating the macro aspect of universe. So in other words, the Tanmatra represent the micro aspect of the universe, and Panchbhuta is macro aspect of the universe. So they in Sankhya it is written that the causative of creation is Akas, Vayu, Agni, Jala, and Prithvi, and their corresponding Tanmatra is Tanmatra, Akas Tanmatra, Vayu Tanmatra, Agni Tanmatra, Jala Tanmatra, Prithvi. So so the direct universe always direct from micro to macro, and the meaning of Akas, Vayu, Jala, Agni, Jala, and Prithvi is as follows. Like Akas is represented by Shiva, which is at rest, stretching in all direction, or Mahadeva, that great illumination or light, and that's define Akas basically defines the space time, and and its attribute is Sabda, which is nothing but a vibration. Vayu is a representation of different kinds of interactions happening in the during the process of creation or after the creation, and its attribute is Sparsa. But also Sabda is accompanying this for Vayu also. Similarly, for Agni means is the transformation or the change, and their attribute is Rupa, visible appearances, and its attribute is also consist of Sparsa and Sabda also. Jala is a stabilization, and the Prithvi is also stabilization, but there is a fundamental difference between stabilization of Jala and the Prithvi. Jala is the stabilization for during the creation and after the formed product. It stabilizes everything. Prithvi only stabilize the formed product, and their respective attributes are Rasha and Gandha. So, but this Purusha cannot work. Is not enough to create the universe. There is a concept of yagna, which is in another term is karma, our karma, or an honest effort. So its definition is yaj dev puja shangatikaran daneshu, which is mixed word, compound word, which makes dev puja, sangatikar, and dan makes this whole word. So that's the whole definition of yagna. So which dev puja is a spirit of veneration. Sangati veneration or reverence generated through the light of knowledge, where Sangati Karan is unification of all the forces of nature, and Dan is donate to acquire attribute to learn the pure concept. So Dan is not a literary something giving, it's just whatever you acquire, you honestly, you should have an honest effort to that acquired attributes to learn for the pure consciousness. And these three, if you Prusa includes in its process of creating the universe, then the process of creation starts. So based on these observations, there are the Vedic model of creation is I put it in form of some questions which modern science also try to answer that, and I put Vedic view on that. So first question is, why is observable universe so infirm on a large scale? So according to Veda, according to Big Bang, the start of the process is a very chaotic process. So if there is a chaotic process, then there should be a lot of anisotropy, because everything will be scattering around. But it's not. It's always a isocratic process. So the Vedas says that the creation of universe is not a chaotic process. It is a well-directed, step-by-step process by Purusha. So it gives a alternative view than the modern science about that universe is not created by any chaotic process. Why did the universe start with a critical rate of expansion? So that answer you can get from the concept of Martanda, where that the universe achieve a critical rate and expanded to a certain size in which it can hold sufficient energy to create a first pair of particle and anti-particle. So in the Martanda concept, that first universe started expanding and then again started contracting, is because the not a right kind of balance of different forces achieved. So they started fine-tuning all those forces, and after that they start expanding again, and they found the critical rate of expansion. So and they started creating particle and pair of particle and antiparticle, and that this particle and antiparticle is referred as Yama or Manu. So and then the next question is how matter dominates. So interestingly, every 1 billion matter, 1 billion matter and antimatter, there is only one difference in count of antimatter, but that one difference is enough to create sufficient matter for sustaining the universe. So how that process is still continuing. So initially at the beginning, the major forces are
Hello.
Looks like he's,
Is disconnected?
yeah,
Yes.
at least he's stuck. So will
Maybe
you
he can come on audio. The video is a bandwidth problem, maybe there.
well, let's see whether he comes back. In the meantime, we can maybe, there's no question, right now.
Well, he's going to connect again. Looks like he's disconnected.
Yeah.
Rajkumarji, yeah, he's there. Please unmute yourself, Rajkumar. Yeah. You may now summarize because we have 20 minutes already. Rajkumar, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Like some, yeah, no,
Yeah, okay.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my slides are visible now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're visible.
Okay. So
Yeah, please summarize now in 5 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. I have 3 more slides. That this tussle between the particle and anti-particles, along with two different forces, leads to the radiation pressure. And this radiation pressure is termed as a Rudra in Veda, and which allow further expansion and rotation. The rotation of universe creates a parity violation, and parity violation finally result in a slight excess of matter over antimatter. So that's how the matter dominates, and it's clearly described in Veda also. Universe start with all the mass energy concentrated at one point, and this leads to a singularity problem. So it's very difficult to understand how all the energy can be stored at one single point, because that will exclude violates the Pauli's exclusion principle, and that will not be a stable system. So it won't be created so easily, and that too with a huge amount of energy. So it will be, before its creation, it will start exploding. So again, that point is addressed in the concept of Martanda, because that starts Martanda concept allow us to how there is a delicate balance. So before basically all the at the beginning of the universe, all the attractive forces and all the repulsive forces are in perfect balance. That's how the whole mass and energy is concentrated, matter and energy is concentrated. Why was the early universe so hot? So since there is no concentration of energy in Vedic theory, about mass and energy is not concentrated at one point in the beginning, so there is no question of hotness. So Veda says that the universe is the cooler place in the beginning. So there is another view about the creation, and that was given by one of the great sages of ancient India, Kapila. He also rejected the universe is created by a being, and he is the proponent of causality creation theory. And he said that the everything proof needs to be substantiated by some means, and that means truth should be substantiated by some proof. And there are two means to get the proof: is the perception and inference. And inference can be of threefold: from cause to effect, effect to cause, and by analogy. He also argued that there are two kinds of things: one which is evolved and another one which is not evolved. Even which is not evolved or uninvolved, that also has some cause, as the evolved matter or species. So this is based on the modern theory. They have a 4 kind of cosmology. So first cosmology is normal expansion, and is when the universe is moving at the less speed, at the speed less than the speed of light. then the universe must have some horizon, and either now or sometimes in the future. And the second is the inflation cosmology, which is when universe expand faster than the speed of light. And third one is the bubble cosmology. This often happens after the initial expansion, and that kind of a multiverse theory is there. And then that is also bubble cosmology is also attached with the anthropic principle. So anthropic bubbles are there where we have an intelligent life, we have a life but not intelligent, no matter, high gravity, weak gravity, no atomic bond, no light, and like that. But I don't think Veda describe these kind of different kinds of universe, although there are different views, and some views says that the Veda accept the horizon, but what I infer is the Veda Veda accept the inflation cosmology, because it allowed the manifested world as well as unmanifested world. The unmanifested world is which is above our horizon. So that perfectly fits in inflation expansion. So just to summarize, which I also last time also present, and this is the three main cosmological principle, and there's some difference in that. And I compare this with Vedic cosmology. Universe had a beginning, and it's no beginning in a steady state cosmology. Vedic cosmology says that it says a beginning. Vedic Big Bang cosmology said that the not rotating, steady state cosmology not rotating, but Veda says that it's rotating. No center for Vedic Big Bang, the steady state cosmology, no center, and Vedic cosmology center. Only thing is that last time I presented that it has a boundary, but now I am correcting this. I think it's I am inclined more towards inflationary cosmology. So I think it's since the manifestation and unmanifested theory is widely referred in ancient texts, so it must be also have no boundary. So also, as I mentioned, that all the mass energy was created in the beginning. Steady state is no beginning, but the Veda says the mass and energy content was zero in the beginning. That's why it is cold. So and it is continuously being created. So my conclusion is are following. Vedic model is fairly precise in explaining the process of creation, although some of the Vedic theory overlaps with modern theory, but Vedic theory develops its own view on the various aspects of creation. It should be well appreciated that Vedic scientists developed concepts related to creation, and that too about 5,000 years ago, without this much of sophistication what we have now. Concept of Yama, Manu, Indra, Vrata, Bar, like Visha, Rudra, Salila, Apa, Vivasvana should be examined carefully along with the concept of Martanda, Rahiranyagarbha to form a comprehensive background for Vedic theory of creation. But both modern theory and Vedic theory of creation have some shortcomings and unable to explain all the phenomena of the creation. Modern cosmological theories are well developed, although it is trying to find the answer of some question related to the origin of universe. However, it would be better if we prove the finding of Vedic scientists in terms of law of physics and mathematics, which ultimately forms the law of nature. And I acknowledge the Institute of Advanced Sciences for developing and giving me freedom for these kind of exploring these kind of things. And my research training at Dr. Singh's lab, Institute of Advanced Sciences, and in University of Massachusetts Lowell and Dartmouth, and my in India I got education from Banaras Hindu University. So I end with my presentation with this quote: "Strong people are always simple." Leo Tolstoy.
Thank you so much, Rajkumarji, Dr. Rajkumarji. I forgot to mention that he is a PhD from University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, under Professor Balram Singh. And he's currently Associate Professor and Director of Academic Advisement and Research Program at the Institute of Advanced Sciences. And he's an expert, a complete expert on protein structure and function and many, many other areas. And of course, botulinum was his basic research. And currently he's actually into so much deeper into the Vedic cosmology. And I think I heard his last presentation also 2017. He's built on so much new knowledge into his previous presentation. And he's nicely described, rather compare the Big Bang, steady state, and the Vedic cosmology, and found Vedic cosmology to be more precise, perhaps. And Hiranyagarbha Sukta started with that, Mandala 10, 121, and then slightly went into Upanishad's sophistication and Puranic expansion of the concept, Prajapati to Brahma, etc., etc. And then you brought in Purusha Prakriti and many, many key concepts of this whole question. And I'm sure you will have found this paper very interesting. And if there are questions, we'll take it very quickly. I can take one question, and I see one question there. And let's see what the question is. Let me see. From Akhand Bharat, Arvind Bharatji, is this possible in the present time of the human world that Vedic knowledge and life spring can create an unbroken human world?
I think that was from the earlier speaker. I think the
earlier speaker. Okay, so now from Manjunath, I guess this is for great. However, it would be more profound to go deeper into understand the Sanskrit words used to explain the creation. Force, energy, matter, antimatter, etc. are vague terms and may not be Sanskrit synonyms. The Samskrita, let me see what the, just disappears. Okay. Yeah. Both Atman and Moksha are scientifically possible. Am I in the same question or have scrolled up already? Yeah.
No, he's just observation. It's just observation.
It's an observation, right? So may not be. So then I guess the question that I would like to ask you, Rajkumarji. Now the Vedic cosmology also has evolved from the Hiranyagarbha down to the so many texts, Upanishads, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, the classical texts, Puranas. So have you looked at? Of course, the basic concept continues, but there are some sophistications brought in by subsequent traditions.
So that's what my next goal is. That's why I said that from last presentation I evolved my presentation to this level, but still there are some questions which relates to the. I think. Modern theory is little bit ahead as far as my knowledge, comparing to Vedic knowledge, what I have. But I am trying to find some answer, and maybe the concept like Yama, Manu, Indra, Vratavar, and those concepts, if it is getting more clearer, then they will kind of explain further in developing. And I think modern theory also evolved slowly into a great cosmological theory, and they time and time they are proving with whatever the sophistication they have. Unfortunately, Vedic scientists probably they don't have that kind of sophistication, but still they theoretically they did great work on that area, those areas, and if we try to formulate those kind of things, because most of the things are in the philosophical way and not in the mathematical way or the defining as a physical law. So if we can define something like some mathematical formula based on those, or we can define some physical theory or based on those observation of Vedic concepts, then that would be better for the whole science and the whole cosmology.
Thank you. Are you suggesting that the modern concepts of cosmology have inched ahead compared to the Vedic cosmology because of very nice bootstrapping of the instrumentation that they have at their advantage, and that Vedic scholars didn't have?
They have advantage, and they have proof. Like Kapila's statement, the proof needs perception and inference. So right now they are ahead in perception as well as they have the data for inference also. That's what I said.
There are a lot of comments actually. There's one comment from Aparna, Dr. Aparna, the very nicely done comparative study. Requires deep study from various perspectives. Interesting presentation. So I guess there are no more further questions. We'll end with your presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Rajkumar.
Thank you very much.
We'll certainly have you again and again in our Vedanta Congress. So the next one is Dr. Lalit Pandey. I think he's already graduated. He's gotten a PhD degree. So I can still call him Dr. Lalit Pandey. So Lalit, please, he's a student. He perhaps was a student at our school. He's already gotten a degree, I guess. आधुनिक परिप्रेक्ष्य में आयुर्वेदिक सम्मत शाला के तंत्रोक्त नेत्र चिकित्सा विज्ञान. प्लीज ललित पांडे जी अपना प्रेजेंटेशन करें. ललित जी आप हैं? ललित जी? ललित पांडे लगता है नहीं है अभी. So what we'll do, we'll wait at the end. Lalit joins, he can present at the end. So we'll then go forward with the another presentation. Kanika Saraf will do the fourth presentation. Was Patanjali and Advait Vedantin re-evaluating Samadhi in the Yoga Sutra? I was trying to research Kanika Saraf. I think she's worked at the Department of Philosophy, Delhi University. Kanika ji, if I'm not wrong. Kanika Sharaf, please unmute yourself. We can't still hear you. There's some audio issue over there.
Is it better now, sir?
Yeah, Kanika, we can now hear you. Please. Are you at the Delhi University Philosophy Department?
Yes,
okay,
sir.
good.
I'm at the University of Delhi, correct.
So welcome, Kanika ji. Please make a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me do my presentation on this 25th International Congress of Vedanta, which is focusing on the Vedantic approach for health and education in the modern times. I'm really grateful to the Indic Studies at University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and the Institute of Advanced Sciences. The title of my paper presentation is Was Patanjali and Advait Vedantin? I'm trying to re-evaluate Samadhi in the Yoga Sutra. So Yoga is considered to be an allied system to the Sankhya philosophy. I'm not denying that Yoga is actually indeed an allied system, and we have, as in this has been asserted time and again, that Yoga formed the metaphysics, which became an integral part of the epistemological school of thought, which was proposed by the Sankhyan philosophers. Also, it is very much true that the Sankhyan philosophers accepted the practical yogic methodology for the purpose of liberation. However, when one is trying to study in detail more extensively the Samadhi path of the Yoga Sutra, then one discovers that there are many non-dualistic trends in Patanjali. And even though in the beginning, Patanjali observes that most definitely it is the Yoga Sutra is Sankhyan in its nature, as he mentions about Purusha as well as Prakriti. But eventually, when in the Yoga Sutra, in the Samadhi path itself, we discover how the subject dissolves, the distinction of subject to duality dissolves into consciousness, and the pure consciousness which evolves makes Patanjali an Advaitin. This transition from Sampragyat to Asampragyat state of Samadhi is the transition of meditator from dualistic to non-dualistic state of pure consciousness. Since the spiritual absorption which takes place at the Asampragyat level is considered to be free from all the forms of vitark, vichar, anand, asmita. And this is the reason why it is characterized as the nirvitark, nirvichar form of samadhi. My paper, in this paper, the purpose of this paper is to basically reevaluate how Patanjali is making a paradigmatic shift from duality of Sankhya to the non-duality, as we observe in various Advaitic interpretations of Upanishads. So I'll be beginning with the major issues and how Patanjali talks about this shift. Patanjali begins with writing Yoga Sutra through the section called Samadhi Path, the first section of the 4 sections of this Yoga Sutra. And in the beginning itself, there is a very important sutra which says Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, wherein he is trying to exhibit how the goal or the entire process of yoga is to find a nirodh to chitta vrittis. This nirodh could be basically understood as a restraining methodology, this restraining methodology for the modifications of chitta. These modifications of chitta are what causes the dualities in the what is the cause of the dualities which are being handled by the outside world, which leave impressions on our chitta. And this is what is causing the panchakleshas. So what Patanjali is trying to assert is that by restraining these chitta vrittis, one should be able to attain what is known as samadhi. Now, Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya, and even various other philosophers have also tried to, Advaitic philosophers have also tried to say a similar thing, and the analogy to it can be observed when Shankaracharya gave a subtle answer to his teacher Govindapad through Nirvan Shatakam, wherein he talks about via negativa, he tries to assert how he is, when he was asked who he was, he tries to say, I'm not this, I'm not that. He tries to say through the process of denial, the psychological denial, there was denial of sense organs. He tries to dissociate himself with the individual as well as the social modifications. So this has got like parallels with respect to Chitta Vritti Nirodh. He's trying to say that I am a witness, Sakshin, because I'm not involved in any of such modifications. Chidanand Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. I am the non-dual consciousness. And in a similar vein, even Buddha did not give any name to this stage, but he also talks about the similar expression when he talks about Nibbana. This non-dual consciousness, this perhaps cannot be expressed in a positive language, since any sort of affirmation will require certain differentiating categories, even as the first speaker in this session, Mr. Jeffrey Armstrong, has clearly talked about the non-translatables. So there is a rider to Sanskrit language, in the sense that the translation is almost next to impossible to happen. And that is why the via negativa path has been assorted. Now, what the process, the Ashtangic mark which Patanjali takes up, is has also got a transition from duality to non-duality. So I will just be quickly assessing the eightfold, the 8 steps which Patanjali talks about: yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahar, dharan, dhyan, and then moving to samadhi. So firstly, Patanjali, what he's trying to do is he's trying to manage the dualities of the external world, which he's trying to address through yam, niyam. Basically, the Ashtangic mark also deals with the dualities in a gross, then in a subtle manner. So the gross dualities are being addressed in yam and niyam. Samadhi is the ultimate act, and even in samadhi there are distinctions. But first, I would want to talk about the initial 7 steps before Samadhi, which he has mentioned. And it is very vital to note that in Samadhi path, also he has tried to elaborate on these steps which are happening in the Eightfold Path. This mechanism, uh, this mechanism of Eightfold Path, he is called as the Ashtangic Marg. Through the Ashtangic Marg, the first 4 steps are to deal with the gross duality in the form. Now, the first 3 steps, which are Yam, Niyam, and Asan. The 5 yamas which he talks about are Ahimsa, which is non-harming, Satya, truth, Astya, non-stealing, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha, which is non-hoarding, along with the 5 niyamas, which are Shauch, cleanliness, Santosh, contentment, Tapas, zeal, Swadhyay, self-study, and Ishwar Pranidhan, which is surrender to the higher Purusha. All of these 10 principles, they function through a human body, and as long as the need for a human body will remain intact, till then a duality shall continue to exist in its gross form. So Patanjali is trying to assert time and again that yes, the body is an instrument for performing any form of worldly activity, but these are the 10 principles which are needed to function, which are needed for the um, functionality of the worldliness. After these yam and niyamas, he talks about the next 3 steps in the Ashtangic Marg, which are asan, pranayam, pratyahar. These next 3 steps, they exhibit a form of subtle duality, as in these steps, one is trying to train one's body through asan, through breathing exercises, through eating habits, pratyahar, what is one consuming, and a withdrawal of the sense organs. What is one? How is one going inwards from by cutting out from the external influences of desires or cravings? One is trying to go inward. So once the gross duality is being mastered, then he's trying to move to subtle forms of duality through these asana, pranayam, and pratyahar. Next, after these 5 steps, he talks about dharana and dhyan. In dharana and dhyan also, they are essential aspects of concentration. The mind, which is largely understood as a wandering instrument, should be rather understood as an instrument an instrument which is more, which can be handled in a manner in which we want it to be. It's like understanding it to be not to be a monkey which cannot be trained, which goes haywire, rather which basically functions according to our intentions if we want it to be. So, so that the human being wills what his mind, so that human being train his minds to be his best friend instead of being commanded by his mind. Now, in the Samadhi path, Patanjali more importantly moves from all these 7 steps to the culmination of the step, which is called as the Samadhi. More importantly, in Samadhi, he is trying to distinguish, or he is trying to create a category of Sampragyat and Asampragyat Samadhi. So now I shall be discussing about this aspect of Samadhi, because by creating a ladder through the 7 steps, Patanjali has tried to move from gross duality to subtle duality to a more subtle form of non-duality through Samadhi. In the 40th Sutra of Samadhi Pad, he writes, Pramanu Param Mahatvanto Sya Vashikarana. It's been translated, interpreted as, it is a yogi's mind which, thus meditating, becomes unobstructed from the atomic to the infinite. So it is only through the process of meditation that one can fathom this chitta vritti which has been arising in the chitta, and by calming this chitta vritti, can a meditator become calm and steadfast by uh, by through by not getting affected through the dualities of the existing world, outside world existing of ourselves. Through meditation, it's been described in Patanjali that the meditator becomes like a crystal who reflects what is kept near to it. And a meditator does not have any thoughts in himself, of himself. And so he does not get identified with the thoughts or the thinking pattern. Now, it's very essential to understand how Patanjali does this transition from sampragyats to asampragyat samadhi. In the samadhi path, Patanjali talks about uh, two, he does a distinction between two forms of samadhi. Uh, Samadhi can be understood as sampragyat samadhi and asampragyat samadhi. Most critical thing to understand here is that in sampragyat level of samadhi, it can be called sampragyat level because the sampragyat level is characterized by savichar, uh, savitark, savichar, sanam, and sashmita. Because therein, in the sampragyat level, the identity of duality still persists. The meditator during a sampragyat samadhi retains his identity as a body, as a thinker, as a meditator, as a human being. So at the Sampragyat level also, the meditator is able to distinguish himself as a human body. That is why Sampragyat level is also characterized as the Sabhit Samadhi, wherein the seeds of karmas are remaining intact in the meditator. Contrary to or opposite to this is the asampragyat samadhi. Now, in the asampragyat samadhi, why is it called the asampragyat samadhi? Because in sampragyat samadhi, the duality, the element of duality remains intact with respect to the meditator. So there is a term to it. Whereas in asampragyat samadhi, that duality gets dissolved. So they cannot, since it's a vaya negativa, so it cannot be called through any name. So since there cannot be any terminology ascribed to it, what was done was a negation of sampragyat. That is why it is called asampragyat, because therein what is experienced at the level of sampragyat also gets excelled, gets transcended. So if one feels that there is a glimpse of bliss in sampragyat, what happens with asampragyat cannot be put into words. That is why asampragyat can only be expressed through vaya negativa. And in asampragyat, it is characterized as nirvitark, it is characterized as nirvichar. So what is happening in sampragyat is that the meditator tries to focus on something external to himself, then moves to something internal. For example, there are instances wherein Samadhipat Patanjali talks about you focus on some external thing like the tip of your nose or some candle which is burning. So on the flick of the candle which is burning, or on some mantra or on some chant, the level of concentration will remain, or you try to focus on something. Thereafter, if one is able to detach from the external dualities, will one be able to reach to some level of concentration and focus. And in even in sampragyat, since the identification remains between the dualities of thinker and thought, the identification remains between the person who is reasoning and the reason, the concept of reason. All of these dualities remain intact. The savitark and savichar are also the worldly processes of meditation, wherein the individuality of the meditator continues to prevail. The meditator remains an individual, and along with the discriminations of the dualistic world. Even in Sanam and Sasmita, which are a part of which are understood as the characterizations of the Sampragyat Samadhi, have their states of dualities attached to them, as the experiencer who is experiencing those states, along with the experiencer's subjective experiences in place, experiences them. Both of these states of Anand and Asmita, they have sattva states in them, wherein there is only ego which remains intact, which is differentiated from all the other objects. So even though the experiencer could possibly think of himself as bereft of his gross body, nonetheless, the existence of a finer body remains intact, the subtle body that still remains intact. And that is why even here, even in the states of Anand and Asmata, this sense of duality is quite functional, and to a very large is quite in place to a very large extent. Now, in the 18th sutra of Samadhipad, of Yoga Sutra, Patanjali makes a transition from Sampragyat to a Sampragyat form of Samadhi. He says, he writes, Viram Pratyay Abhyas Purva Sanskaresho Nyaha, wherein all the forms of dualities get dissolved, and that is how what that all that remains is non-difference between the perceiver and the perceived and the perception itself, like the distinction between gyan, yay, and gyata, that dissolves. And these the distinctions in the various manifestations of prakriti and purush, they all cease to exist. That is how one reaches the nirbhit samadhi. So like in sampragyat samadhi, it's characterized by being a sabhit samadhi. In asampragyat samadhi, it's characterized by being a nirbhit samadhi. The samadhi happens in a seedless form. In this stage, all the karmic seeds are burnt out, and so the karmic impressions which acted as seeds for producing newer karmic impressions cease to exist anymore. Now, in the Yoga Sutra, Patanjali at length, through the 54 sutras of Samadhipad, discusses how one could transcend the Savitar Samadhi in order to reach a Nirvichar Samadhi. At length, he discusses that. And in the Sampragyat Samadhi, what entails is a disappearance of all forms of impurities. But in the Asampragyat Samadhi, there is a disappearance even of the forms of purity. In Sampragyat Samadhi, what consists is the disappearance of thought. But in Asampragyat, one experiences the disappearance of entire process of thinking itself. What I'm trying to assert over and over again is that Sampragyat Samadhi is wherein the dualities will exist, so it's easy to define and put it in words through language. So language plays a very important role. What can be defined is through language is functioning in the realm of duality. But what cannot be defined through language, what can only be experienced, can only be stated by negating what can be defined through assertion. So that is what happens at the level of asampragyat samadhi. In the case, as we notice that this state of samadhi, which is the asampragyat samadhi, was perhaps achieved by Mahavir or Gautam Buddha, and this is the stage wherein they become videhe, prakriti lay, wherein even though a gross body exists, but the experiencer, he becomes bodiless. In other words, one is no more just the body in a physical realm, but the body becomes an abode wherein one ceases to get identified with one's bodily self. So the external world of duality will feel or will not really have much of an influence on the physical body. The feeling of coldness, like if externally it's winters, or if externally it's extremely cold, the experiencer will not be affected by it in that manner that a normal human being will get affected. So the concept of ego, ahankar, manas, which are responsible for the functioning of a samadhi stage, uh, wherein one must not get too entangled with the spiritualistic ego, nor with the ego of being a yogi, because even then, if one gets attached to becoming a yogi, then also the effects of yoga will not be the primary ones, and the entire focus of the whole practice will get derailed. So these Advaitic trends are the Advaitic trends which I'm trying to assert in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. This is what is the beauty of Yoga Sutra, because despite beginning with a dualistic framework, he culminates into an Advaitic fashion, and this mannerism or this structural framework is not just exclusive to Patanjali. Rather, this Advaitic philosophy is noticed in various other schools also, like in the case of Vishishtadvaita of Ramanujacharya, in the case of Shuddhadvaita of Vallabhacharya, even in the case of Nagarjuna's philosophy, and also in Kashmir Shaivism, because both Ramanujacharya and Vallabhacharya, they try to establish non-duality on the basis of Vaishnava metaphysics. In the case of Kashmir Shaivism, it tried to accomplish the same task through the concept of Param Shiva. In the case of Nagarjuna, the non-duality exists almost as is found in Shankaracharya. For Nagarjuna, the ultimate reality is Advai, which is non-dual, which is devoid of any plurality, prapanch shunya. Also, like Shankaracharya, Nagarjuna also ascribes indescribability with the ultimate reality when he talks about the concept of anekartham or ananartham. So both Shankaracharya as well as Nagarjuna make a transit from duality to non-duality in their respective philosophies. Now, I would like to just wind up this paper and like to make a conclusion by saying that in the Samadhi, in the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, the Asampragyat Samadhi which is totally transformational. It can be characterized as Ritambar Pragya. The 48th Sutra of Samadhi Pad, Patanjali mentions that Ritambar Tatra Pragya. Ritambar Tatra Pragya. The knowledge, it's interpreted as the knowledge in that is called to be filled with truth. So Ritambara Pragya of this Yoga Sutra, it can be said to have an analogy with the Turiya state of human consciousness as is found in the Vedantic philosophy. Very briefly, Vedanta talks about, very briefly, I would like to talk about this fourth stage of consciousness, which Vedanta has so explicitly talked about over and over again, which are Jagrat, Sushupti, Swapna, and Turiya. Which are wakefulness, sleeping, dream, and deep sleep state. So, Turiya state, it is in the Turiya state that one comes across or one consciously can awaken the witness self, and one can visit all the other three states consciously. Bigger question at play is how can one possibly witness one's own self? Now, in the works of Vedanta, the witness consciousness is called as the Turiya because it is understood to transcend the other three states of waking, dreaming, and sleeping. The extraordinary condition of the awakened or realized person goes beyond what is generally labeled as a mystical experience. Now, it is a perpetually self-transcending state of being in which all the other kinds of experiences may arise, but which is in itself non-experiential. So, in this experience of Turiya, which is quite akin to the experience of Ritambha Pragya, also termed as a Sampragyat Samadhi, wherein the reflections which cover the pure consciousness get subsided and Chitta in its pure form, Chetana, is experience which is evident to the human being without any vrittis, without any coverings, modifications. This is what is the Nirbij form of Samadhi, the seedless, without any beach, wherein all the karmic impressions get burnt out. I would like to just wind up my presentation by saying that this state of utter non-differentiation is what makes Patanjali an Advaitin. And in my point of view, even though Patanjali's Yoga Sutra begins with the Sankhyan duality of Purush and Prakriti, nonetheless, the manner in which Patanjali paves way for non-dualism through his text Yoga Sutra is commendable, as is evident in each and every sutra of Yoga Sutra. These non-dualistic trends are even evident in this last section of Yoga Sutra, which is the Kaivalya part, wherein Patanjali writes, I quote, the unity in things is from the unity in changes. Though there are three substances, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, their changes being coordinated, all objects have their unity. Followed by the next sutra, which is translated as the object being the same, perception and desire vary according to the various minds. These sutras exemplify how the underlying unity is ever existent, but on the account of ignorance or vidya, the human mind tends to cognize the reality through his own set of subjective lenses. This is what results in his or her own set of realities being different from those of other beings. This transition has been well projected by Patanjali in an elaborate manner throughout his Yoga Sutra. And it is exemplary how Patanjali shifts from duality of the Sankhya school to the non-duality of Advaita Vedanta. Conclusively, instead of labeling Patanjali's school of yoga as a Sankhya dualistic philosophy, Dvaitavad, it will be more appropriate, in my view, to classify Patanjali as an Advaita Vedantin in its truest form. With these words, I'd like to thank the chairing Professor Girish Nath Jaji, the the organizing committee of this Vedanta Congress, the people who are attending this Vedanta Congress, and all the other listeners. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kanika ji, for a beautiful presentation on a very important topic. Was Patanjali in Advaita Vedanta? And she concludes that he actually was. and in doing that, she has gone through the details of it and trying to discuss the samadhi and the various processes, in particular the asamprakyat samadhi and the 4 stages of consciousness. So thank you so much, Kanika ji. I will now check if there are some questions or comments for you. I see one question. Let's see. Where is there evidence that Samkhya uses yoga as a method for Kaivalya? Rukmani ji is asking, is evidence that Sankhya uses yoga as a method for Kaivalya? There are these, terms for this, nirvana, nirvikalpa, samadhi, Kaivalya, and you would perhaps agree that these are almost synonymous, or there are subtle differences between them.
Could you please repeat the question? What was the question?
Question that Rukmani ji is asking, where is there evidence that Sankhya uses yoga as a method for Kaivalya? And I added that, that these are the terms, Kaivalya, Nirvikalpa, Samadhi, etc. And slightly.
Correct. So Sankhya and Yoga, actually, they have been understood as allied schools in the manner that Yoga was understood as a practical methodology for attaining liberation. So for Sankhya school, Yoga became a practical methodology. So these common terminologies of attaining liberation were the inspiration. Correct. Right, sir. You're right in your observation.
There's a question.
Similarity, correct.
There's a question from Dr. Rashmi M. Shetkar. Can you extend Patanjali quoting you with respect to Sankhya? Who is the doer? Quoting you, Adi Shankara, who is the doer? Are you able to understand the question?
Can you extend Patanjali? Yes, I can read the chat. Can you extend Patanjali quoting you with respect to Sankhya? Who is the doer? Quoting you, Adi Shankara, who is the doer? So okay, an extension to this can be that I gave an example of Nirvana Shatakam. In that manner, the person who meditates, or the person who is undertaking the task of doing meditation, the meditator is the doer, is the person who is engaged in the worldly duties, is also the person who is engaged in trying to transcend from the worldly duties to something non-dual. So the doer becomes the person who is experiencing. The experiencer is the doer. And in that manner, what the parallel or the analogy which is being drawn is that both of them are trying to move from the concept of doer to the concept of a non-doer, in the sense that not just with respect to a physical worldly realm, but in the sense of experiencing. So the concept of doership is very important. So like in Bhagavad Gita, they say that don't get attached to the action of doing. That is very important. So even though you're doing something, the concept of doer is existing as a physical body in the sense of performing action physically, but the concept of getting attached to that action of getting attached to that act of action dissolves. If I have tried to clarify the question correctly.
Okay. There's a question from Mr. Balram Singh. It says, what if someone withdraws sensory input by taking intoxicants like alcohol? Would that amount to be pratyahar?
So there have been like more lately, there have been researchers on these things. What these intoxicants do, like alcohol and all of these external substances do, is just trying. Firstly, they would not account to being called pratyahar per se. What these substances do is that they try to cut you off chemically in an induced form. So they are not trying to do what Patanjali would want to say through his aphorisms. What Patanjali was trying to say was to not get attached to the external duality. What these substances do is a glimpse of what he would try to say, because there have been researchers lately, scientific researchers also, that if somebody has consumed alcohol, if somebody has consumed substances like drugs and all, they reach to that, they get a glimpse of the stage with which a meditator also reaches. But that's just a very short period, chemically induced thing. That's not what the stage wherein the stage of bliss or the stage of transcendence wherein a meditator at a sampragyat samadhi or even at a sampragyat samadhi would reach. So I would not say that that is what is the meaning of pratyahar. Pratyahar is by cutting down from an external desire. Even in consuming an alcohol or an external substance, the desire remains intact, the duality remains intact, the body remains intact. That is not cutting down from an external world. There is still an attachment to that substance. There is still an attachment to, if somebody consumes alcohol, if somebody consumes an external substance, there is still a desire that I want to get over this, or if there's a mental stress or a strain or a craving to want to indulge in this. That pratyahar is basically to cut off from the external world, the external senses, from the sense organs, and go inwards. By consuming alcohol, even that sense, the desire and the craving is still remaining intact. So I don't think that can be called pratyahar.
Thank you. There are two comments, one from Dr. Rashmi M. Shetkar. In Ritambara 147, 148, something cryptically written, PYS, I don't know. And in Turiya or Cavalier in Vedanta, there is no witness, but only being, no duality. This states just happen. This state just happen. And then the comment from Rukmani Trichur in the Yoga Sutra, Vikalpa is a mental construction based on words. So Nirvikalpa is its opposite. It was Sadananda in the Vedanta Sara who equated Nirvikalpa Samadhi with Samadhi. But there was a lot of criticism from later yoga scholars. It had to be dropped. Every system can stand on its own, and one needs to understand the merits of each school and its own merits. So there's a good comments subsequently. So I guess you're all set. So then thank you so much, Kanika ji, once again. And if there are any further questions, we'll certainly let you know. Thank you so much. So the next presentation now is from Anne Melfi, The Power of Affect in Vedantic Pedagogy. I was looking for Anne on the internet, and I found one description. Anne completed her PhD in rhetoric and composition at Georgia State University. Her dissertation research on understanding Indian rhetoric on its own terms, using a Vedic key to unlock the Vedic paradigm, on which this paper is the paper that I found description of. And then she is, I guess, Georgia State University College of Arts and Sciences. So that's what I got on internet. Thank you, and please go ahead with your presentation. You have to unmute yourself. Please unmute.
Yes. Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Gupta, for setting me up, because I do talk about yoga quite a lot in terms of Vedanta. So the power of affect in Vedantic pedagogy. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Affect, by definition, it is an emotion that changes or influences what you do or think. It is also the root word for affection, and I will explore its important function in the Vedantic tradition of teaching, which suggests a much more nuanced significance of affect and its power to catalyze transformation. The rich legacy that Vedanta offers education includes not only a vast and profound subject matter and sophisticated heuristics for knowing, but also powerful methods of conveying knowledge holistically, intellectually, and experientially to lead the mind to know the ineffable reality in whole and therefore useful form. Vedantic approaches to teaching strive to overcome the conundrum posed in the Upanishads that speech is Brahman, but speech cannot express Brahman. And that holistic reality can only be fully known on its own level by direct experience. So to lead seekers beyond their current state of knowledge to total knowledge, the sages used not only logic, analogical thinking, and the figurative language of metaphor, sign, and symbol, which stretch the limits of language, but also, and perhaps even more importantly, they have used a bridge beyond language, transcending language, the direct and lively bond between student and teacher. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi has summed it up thus, quote, "Wisdom passes between heart and heart. This paper explores how and why the heart has traditionally played an important role in Vedantic pedagogy." Devotion, surrender to the Guru. This timeless tradition has sustained the flow of knowledge so that the full value of life can be known and lived. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 34 proclaims that when seekers offer homage, repeated inquiry, and service to enlightened masters, they will teach you knowledge. Adi Shankaracharya comments that, quote, "Pleased by these signs and other signs of reverence, the teachers who know truth from scriptures and have also realized it through direct experience will declare to you this knowledge." This suggests that devotion is a necessary precondition for receiving supreme knowledge. Maharishi explains in his commentary on the verse that, quote, "Faith makes the student a good assimilator of knowledge. Devotion sets him free from resistance and at the same time influences the heart of the master, where the spring of wisdom flows. Devotion on the part of the disciple creates affection in the heart of the master and cuts short the long path of evolution. So devotion dissolves resistance, making the student more receptive to the flow of knowledge. Modern affective neuroscience has found that emotions have a strong effect on learning and memory, and negative affective states such as anxiety and depression can be detrimental to learning. A survey of recent research forecasts that future research could lead to enhanced educational practices and technologies. There has been a tendency, however, to focus on overcoming learning deficits rather than fostering enlightenment. Scientists would be wise to develop research questions based on the much more advanced and profound understanding of emotion that the Vedic science has to offer. It will be helpful, I think, to understand and expand the definition of emotion and the nature and source of its power from a Vedic view. A student asked Maharishi, quote, "I was wondering how the emotions work." And this discussion ensued. Maharishi said, "Emotions are finer than the intellect, finer than thinking, finer than the mind, even though the intellect is the finest aspect of the mind. The emotions just don't worry about the intellect. Keep your decisions to yourself. I want this." Emotions are more powerful. It's a good field on which life is really lived. It's on emotions that life is lived. All intellectual decisions come out of emotions. So if emotions direct our attention, indeed our life choices, despite the best efforts of the intellect, then it seems obvious that learning, in order to be optimum, needs to be harnessed to emotion. But what counts as emotion? Fear, anger, delight? Maharishi describes it in cosmic terms. The course participant asks, "How is an emotion constructed?" And Maharishi answers, "Emotions are a wave of that aspect of life which is called ananda, bliss. Intellect is the impulse of life, which is called chit, consciousness. Absolute is that state of life, not impulsive life, but state, which is called sat, that which never changes. It's a beautiful thing. They are all on the same level, but somehow life is more guided by bliss. The whole stream of life, every impulse of activity is guided by bliss. This is what's called evolution. The intellect always decides in favor of more and more and more. This happiness, this impulse of happiness drags along in its direction the intellect. So the intellect serves emotions. Close quote. So emotion in all its forms is ultimately a wave on the ocean of bliss and a driver of growth, the most powerful motivator, not just to achieve and fulfill one's desires, not only to motivate more efficient learning, but ultimately to attain moksha. Ananda and moksha have not been the dominant definition of motion in our world today, particularly outside the Vedic worldview. Nor has neuroscience generally framed its study of emotional states in terms of bliss. But the Center for Brain, Consciousness, and Cognition at Maharishi International University studies the neurological correlates of higher states of consciousness, as well as their correlation to academic progress. The bliss factor is taken into account. The course participant we heard from above continues to question Maharishi, much in the tradition of repeated inquiry exemplified in the Upanishads. He asks again, how are emotions constructed? Maharishi explains that, quote, emotions are constructed in bliss. Just as knowledge is structured in consciousness, emotions are structured in bliss. Ananda, that's close quote. Ananda, the bliss aspect of transcendental consciousness, is one with the transcendental field of knowledge, and thus they are connected as the basis of everything. The Taittiriya Upanishad tells of how Bhrigu, in the role of Shisha, having gone within, quote, having gone within, he recognized that bliss is Brahman. For truly, out of bliss, these beings are born, close quote. So having gone within, he recognized. Thus, Ananda, in all its waves of expression as different emotions, is not only the nature of the ultimate reality, but also integral to knowledge and knowing. Quote, knowledge is structured in consciousness, Maharishi points out. This is the motto of Maharishi International University. It is also Maharishi's most concise translation of the Ritu Akshara verse of the Rig Veda. One of his more elaborated translations of this truly untranslatable verse reveals a compelling point. It goes, the Richa, the expressions of the Veda, is situated in Akshara, the imperishable transcendental field in which reside all the impulses of creative intelligence, responsible for the whole manifest universe. He whose awareness is not open to this field, what can the Richas accomplish for him? Those who know this level of reality are established in evenness, wholeness of life, of course, Brahman. So if one's awareness is not open to this field, then words, the hymns of textbooks, of lectures, fail to bring desired results. Maharishi posits that, quote, knowledge is never gained through reading. It is gained through being. If it doesn't come on the level of existence, then it doesn't exist. Close quote. To be conscious of anything, one must first be conscious as fully as possible for best results. This is why traditionally Dhyan Yoga and education go hand in hand. At Maharishi International University, all the students, faculty, and staff practice the Transcendental Meditation Program, in addition to all conventional reading and writing, whether in the MBA, computer science, Vedic studies, art, any field. And I did get a master's there in Vedic studies and in writing. So this naturally results in improved performance and satisfaction in teaching and learning, but excuse me, the effects of Dhyan Yoga far exceed the benefit of success in school. Patanjali in his Yoga Sutra points out that in the clear experience of Nirikara Samadhi dawns the splendor of spirituality. There resides the intellect that knows only the truth, Ritambara Pragya. That is, in the most unbounded experience of samadhi, beyond thought, lies the ability to have the knowledge of anything within the window of your own heart. Just by thinking of it, Maharishi explains, it simply appears as on a television screen. He refers to this level as the finest level of feeling. Back to our theme. Bhartrihari has called this level of perception, this level of speech, pashanti, the seeing one, where one sees the whole idea at a glance, just as composers sometimes see the inspiration for a whole book or a composition at a glance. I think almost everyone has had this experience of getting an idea, a faint thought that doesn't seem to be much of a thing. And then when you go to write it down, it takes several words, maybe a few pages, maybe a book, a poem, to express the whole thing in a linear flow of language. So according to Bhartrihari, in the Pashanti level, the knower sees the meaning of a word in its whole and holistic value. So this fine feeling level is of particular interest to Indian scholars who are currently formulating communication theory based on traditional texts, especially yoga, the Natya Shastra, and the Vakyapadya of Bhartrihari. Even though American communication theory still dominates research and teaching in most Indian universities. For example, Nirmala Mani Adhikari of Kathmandu University explains how, according to Sadharanikaran theory drawn from the Natya Shastra, those who wish to communicate with each other must first be sahridayas, of one heart, feeling together. It's a technical term describing interlocutors who are capable of communicating. Thus, the confluence of feeling is considered a necessary precondition for the give and take of communication. Otherwise, one is not fully receptive. When there is resistance, communication tends to fail. The ultimate goal of the Sadharanikaran communication process is moksha. Perfect communication is possible on the superlative degree of unification when the sahridayas are in the state of yoga. They are sakshatkara, sharing evident or intuitive perception. They are realized, Adhikari writes. And in his article on the yoga of speech, Sanchar Yoga, he says that in that state, there is no need for physical or worldly forms of communication in order to understand each other. No gestures, no words, silence. And countless stories of interactions with saints have borne this out. I think everyone has stories. This wisdom from the Natya Shastra, though applicable to everyday life, was originally designed by Brahma, as the legend goes in the Natya Shastra, for leveraging the didactic power of the arts to make the Vedic wisdom easily accessible to all. The sensory language of the arts appeals directly to feeling, to give knowledge of the sublime wholeness at a glance or through hearing. The artist, together with the audience as sahridayas, enlivens and refines the emotions to create the divine rasa in the awareness. Vocalist Lalita Ubhayakar explains that, quote, rasa is the infinite. He is the rasa, close quote. In his Natya Shastra, Bharata describes the effect, quote, a meaning which touches the heart creates rasa. The entire body feels the rasa, like fire consuming a dry stick, close quote. To receive the rasa, a traditional part of the artist's training, to achieve the rasa, that is, the artist's training includes meditation, dhyan yoga, so that the supreme degree of emotion can permeate the art. The Vedic civilization has placed great value on feeling in these many ways. Every child knows satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat, na bruyat satyama priyam. Speak the truth, speak lovingly, do not speak truth unlovingly. Rough translation. This venerable ethic serves to culture and protect the all-important feeling level of awareness where one's world is born. It is central to the Indian education, which Roma Chowdhury asserts, quote, lays stress on the absolute necessity of a personal relation between the teacher and the taught. A mechanical, stereotyped system of education lacks entirely the feeling of living fellowship, the spirit of loving give and take that alone can make education fruitful in any real sense of the term. When knowledge is known to flow from heart to heart, then the very basis of that flow must be cultured. The education system in India has been much influenced by the British system. Maharshi points out that the loss of the Vedic means of gaining knowledge, which enrich the inner life and therefore spontaneously enrich the outer life, is a great loss to the world and inevitably results ultimately in revival. For the natural tendency of life cannot be resisted for long. Satyameva Jayate. Maharshi Ji has played an active role in that revival, developing schools and universities and his transcendental meditation programs around the world, so that, quote, the unimaginably infinite value of knowledge becomes lived on the very basis of life, close quote. In conclusion, Vedic culture has cherished the power of affect, particularly devotion and compassion, the finest expressions of Ananda, for good reason. It seems to come packaged inextricably with the state of yoga, by definition in one unity, and thus is also integral to the means of attaining it. Finest feeling has been considered a prerequisite for gaining the highest goal of communication by venerable sources. Yogis, ancient and modern, have shown their example and their teaching how the heart opens a pathway for total knowledge to dawn. And that is what I have to offer. Thank you. And my apologies for my Sanskrit.
Thank you. And your Sanskrit was great. Your accent pronunciation was absolutely perfect. No problem at all. Sanskrit words. Thank you so much. And I believe you've been trained at the Mercy University, International University at Fairfax, Iowa. I have been there. I've lived there for 10 days. And I like the campus very well. And I was actually at that time I was editing the volume, one of the volumes of the Waves Conference. It's a great campus and a great city, all Vedic architecture. Lovely. I've been quoting that architecture and that culture everywhere. Thank you so much. And you were basically focusing on how to prepare the students. And all the classes begin there with meditation. And when you're able to prepare the students, there's a heightened state of communication and you have accelerated learning. So pedagogy improves. And that's what is certainly very, very interesting. And I guess the pedagogy is pedagogical research should focus on a little bit more empirically on that aspect. And I think there's one person, Dr. Ramadhan Sambuj has done some work on that. We had his presentation earlier. And so I'm sure there'll be a lot more interesting work coming out of your paper and your work. I'm sure universities like JNU, INADS, Index Studies, and your university can perhaps do collaboration for. I have a deep interest in scanning all the ashramas in India and trying to basically document how they teach these scriptures, what methods they follow, and whether that is going to improve pedagogy in today's India, in the world. So that's something that we should perhaps research a little bit more, with a lot of data from the ashramas around here in India. Thank you so much once again. Let me see if there are questions. I saw some comments for you. And let's see. Brilliantly presented, objectively handling presentation on sensational, sensorial, emotional science. Please, can you send me your script for reference? So someone has given me, Rashmi has given her email. You can send the presentation. And I don't see a question as such for you, right? So yeah. So one question from my side. Can you tell me, I know Peter Frown there, who is very interested in the Shiksha text. I had actually written to him for the Atre Shiksha manuscript because one of my students wanted to do research on that, and we were not having that manuscript here in India. So he suggested me going to asking the Hamburg Library and getting the good quality manuscript from there. So Peter is a great resource. So what is the latest research? Is someone, some faculty or group of faculty members doing research in this area, pedagogy? Because I'm very keen actually in exploring this area.
Well, you would probably like to talk to, there's a few different faculty members in different ways. Fred Travis is the director of the Brain Research Institute. I forgot the name, but so he has a webpage, Dr. Fred Travis.
Okay.
And so you can read the research, you can be in touch with him. He's very forthcoming. You can see recordings of some of his videos of some of his presentations and so forth. And he might be able to put you in touch with collaborators from the education department too. But all the faculty are trained, because I did teach one course there in writing, and are trained to talk to the student in certain ways and, you know, very directly from Maharishi. And there's a children's school from first grade to, you know, through high school as well, close to the campus. You may have toured it. So yes, and that's a very beautiful thing to explore.
Yeah, they took us around the city and we saw many things. Thank you so much. And I'll certainly contact Fred and some of his collaborators and try to get more details on it. Thank you so much. So now we move on to the last presentation. If Lalit is not around still, we'll go to Anushrita Mandal. She is teaching in a college in Sialda, Kolkata, Sanskrit. She did her MPhil from JNU under my supervision. And she's going to present Vedanta thought and Brahmachari in modern education. Anushrita, please take over.
Sir, please allow me to share my screen.
Balramji, can you make her a co-host?
Yeah, I think she should be able to do that now.
Okay. Anushrita, please check.
Sir.
Anushrita, are you able to present?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, please continue.
Sir, is it visible now?
Yeah. Well, there's no screen, by the way. You've also been off now. Only your name flashes out there.
Oh.
She seems to have some weak internet.
If there's a connection issue, you can just do the audio, and or you'll have to actually just share your screen anyway.
Yeah, sir.
कोई मुश्किल हो रही है क्या? फिर से अनशेयर करके फिर से शेयर कीजिए.
Sir. Okay, sir. Okay.
एक बार शेयर खत्म कर दें और फिर से शेयर कर दें तो हो जाएगा मेरे ख्याल से. और फिर से शेयर कर दें. शेयर पेज करेंगे ना, तो शेयर करने के बाद देखिए पेज का आता है क्या शेयर करने के बाद?
सर स्क्रीन आ रहा है.
अच्छा, स्क्रीन कर दीजिए, शेयर स्क्रीन कर दीजिए.
Is it coming, sir?
नहीं, पेज तो नहीं आ रहा.
जिस फाइल को शेयर करना है उसको पहले ओपन करके रख लीजिए.
हाँ.
और उसके बाद स्टार्ट शेयरिंग करिएगा, तो आपको वो दिख जाएगा उसमें.
पहले फाइल को खोल लीजिए. हाँ, सही कह रही है.
सर मेरा स्क्रीन दिख रहा है, I don't know.
नहीं, अनशेयर कर लीजिए एक बार फिर से और फाइल खोल लीजिए, उसके बाद फिर शेयर कीजिए। फाइल खोल लीजिए, फाइल क्लिक करके खोल लीजिए अपने स्क्रीन पे।
सर फाइल ओपन है अभी।
अब शेयर बटन दबाइए। शेयर स्क्रीन जब करेंगे ना,
शेयर
स्क्रीन से,
स्क्रीन।
हाँ ठीक है, मैंने शेयर कर दिया, मेरा हो गया, ठीक है, स्टॉप कर रहा हूँ, शेयर कीजिए।
सर अब हो रहा है।
नहीं, Alam ji, she allowed to share screen?
Yeah, she is, I think it came for momentary. So I think you have,
एक बार फिर से कोर्स बना दीजिए।
आप पहले स्टॉप शेयर कर दीजिए और उसके बाद उस फाइल को, जो आपकी पीडीएफ या जो फाइल है, उसको आप ओपन करके रख लीजिए। जैसे ही आप स्टार्ट शेयरिंग में, शेयर स्क्रीन में जाएंगी, आपको आपके स्क्रीन पे वो ओपन फाइल दिख जाएगी। उस पे आप क्लिक करिएगा तो स्क्रीन पे आ जाएगा।
स्क्रीन तो ओके, आई एम शेयरिंग द स्क्रीन।
इसकी शेयर करने के बाद क्या आता है जब क्लिक करती है तो कोई नया विंडो खुलता होगा ना?
कई सारे उसमें होंगे विंडोज, उसमें एक आपकी वो फाइल भी होगी।
एक विंडो खुलेगा उसमें
जो स्क्रीन आ रहा है, डॉक्यूमेंट, फोटो, तो स्क्रीन कर रही हूँ मैं।
हाँ, जब आप स्क्रीन शेयर दबाते हैं ना तो एक विंडो खुलेगा। विंडो में देखिए आपकी फाइल का, उस पर क्लिक कर दीजिए, शेयर दबा दीजिए। नीचे राइट में शेयर बटन होगा। उसके बाद जो विंडो खुलता है ना, उसके नीचे राइट में शेयर बटन होगा, दबाना पड़ेगा आपको। सेलेक्ट करके, डॉक्यूमेंट सेलेक्ट करके बटन। अब ऐसा करो, मुझे फाइल भेज दो
सर। यस सर, यस सर।
व्हाट्सएप पे भेज दो फाइल। I'll share it. Send the file to me on WhatsApp. I'll just.
Sorry sir, but
कोई बात नहीं,
don't know why it's not coming.
मुझे भेज दो फाइल, मैं भी नोट कर देता हूँ।
यस सर, मैंने भेज दिया है।
व्हाट्सएप पे भेजा आपने?
यस सर।
अच्छा ठीक है, पीपीटी राइट, अभी मैं करता हूँ, जो डाउनलोडेड। ठीक है, शेयर कर रहा हूँ पीपीटी। देखो आया ये?
यस सर, यस सर, यस सर, यस सर।
ओके,
थैंक यू सो मच सर।
I'll change the screen. ये ठीक है?
Yes sir. So I am very much thankful to the. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, बिल्कुल।
Yes. Next, yes sir. I am very much thankful to the organizer of Vedanta conference and to my supervisor, Professor Dr. Grishnath Jha, for giving me this opportunity to present my paper. My topic of my paper is Vedanta thought and Brahmacharya in modern education. So the aim of this paper is to discuss the relevance of Brahmacharya, which I call it cultural Vedanta in modern education, with the help of comparative approach. So Broto means vows or objective, and Chari, who performs those vows, that person is called Brahmachari. So in short, we all are Brahmachari. So because every day we are performing some vows, then what are the special vows here? They are Jnana, Shrama, Satya, Aikya, and Ananda. Vedanta thought of Gita, Brahma Sutra, and Upanishads are accumulated here as a five-fold philosophy of life. So next, these five vows cannot be kept in separate compartments. Next slide, sir. If we want to be a Brahmachari, as we know, to feel the subtle, we need to know the gross entity first. So from thumb to little finger of the hand, respectively, represent these five vows. So thumb is for Jnana, index is for Shrama or action or karma, and then the middle one is for truth, because this is the bigger one, all pervading one, and this ring finger, which actually connects. When we explain to children, we say you can open each finger alone, but this you cannot open easily. So this denotes unity. And the last one is for Ananda. So whatever we want to achieve, that would be in a group. That should be in a group. So in Brahmachari, whatever dance or song we perform, we do it in a group, most of the time in a circle. Brahmachari, they have their own salutation or abhivadana based on this 5 bows. And when they meet each other, one should keep his fingers tightly together and uplifting the right hand with the palm facing front side. This is the salutation system. Even in all the folk dances around the world, we can find this clap or folded hand together. Example, traffic police or Kumi of Tamil Nadu, Dhamail from all of the folk dances. Even day-to-day life, traffic police also use this what we call as gesture. It is actually used in classical dance also as pataka, according to Bharata's Natya Shastra. You know, before yesterday, there was a paper on Carnatic classical music. So here, I want to say is folk and culture are the two sides of one coin. So like classic, folk should be learned by the people. If folk is informal, Brahmachari is the formalized name of that. In that Brahmachari, a number of folk dances, songs have been incorporated without modification of their traditional form. So it is a harmonization. Okay, next slide, sir. At the very beginning, the concept of liberation and suffering was more or less political. Suffering was dependency under British and liberation was to get rid of that. Brahmachari was created from a sense of national awareness through one's regional folk culture among people, irrespective of caste, religion, sex, and age. So now the question is why it should not be named as a political national freedom movement. Because the founder of Brahmachari, Guru Shraddha Datta, was ICS officer. So he has contributed himself to the freedom movement indirectly. So after achieving the freedom, it is not end till date. Independence from British is the outer part of freedom, but the main cause of dependency was Atma Vishwaran. Young scholars were blindly adopting their Western thoughts and Babu culture arised. As a natural reaction, some Indian scholars like Rabindranath Tagore, Aurobindo, and then Vivekananda, when they came, then the idea of rediscovery and rethink of indigenous treasure has come up to counter. Freedom should be done with India's own intellectual tradition. And in that series, Guru Shraddha Datta was another pioneer. It is said a layman cannot perform subjective meditation, antarmukhi sadhana. Rather, they believe in outer life. And Vedanta is not a cup of tea of a layman, but Guru Shraddha Datta proved these lines wrong. He refused Babu culture and he accumulated all the definitions that they chede diye kolum ghosha. Stop writing and go to the field with your axe for work. Even he said Vedanta should not remain only in scriptures, cave or forest. It has to be a part of everyday life. So he has tried to merge and make a knot between modern and traditional thought. He has given rational aim towards Vivekananda's practical Vedanta through a structural institution called Brahmachari. Sir, next. So it is a multimodal 3-level improvement in person, all sphere of life like physical, mental, and spiritual. It is a process of purification of the soul by nurturing body and mind. So local culture and local identity should be understood properly in order to gain a proper understanding of one's own self. So be local, then be national, and then be universal, or you can call it be world citizen. So I'd like to share here oath of each brotherchari when he or she has to take when they're at the enrollment period. And that is, I love Bengal, I love Bharat, I love world. আমি বাংলাকে ভালোবাসি, ভারতকে ভালোবাসি, বিশ্ব ভুবনকে ভালোবাসি। আমি বাংলার সেবা করব, ভারতের সেবা করব, বিশ্ব ভুবনের সেবা করব। আমি বাংলার ব্রতচারী, ভারতের ব্রতচারী, বিশ্ব ভুবনের ব্রতচারী। I don't think I need to translate it. And here Bengal or Bangla means undivided Bengal, obviously. All the actions, interesting things in Brotachari is all the actions are called Ali. Ali has a different connotation in Islamic studies, but here, so next slide. Here, Ali means any kind of action. If a brotachari learns how to make a mask, that portion will come under Shilpali. So Shilpa is art and Ali is action. So together is Shilpali. And so singing portion is called Gitali, dancing portion is called Rittali, servicing portion or maybe community work will comes under Shebali, and there are a lot more. So next slide. Brotachari is the mixing product of singing, dancing, physical exercise, yoga, meditation, playing, work education, community work, and many more. But the core significance of the term Brotachari is for self-realization, because I told at the very beginning, Gyan, Shrom, Satya, Aikya, and Ananda. These are in Bengali, but actually these are the Sanskrit terms which are actually famous in Vedantic thought also. So next slide. So Brotachari is a medium, and at the same time, it is goal. And that is why, like Brahman cannot be attained, but after knowing Brahman, someone become Brahman. So here also, one does not do Brotachari, rather throughout the life, one should try to be a Brotachari. And just like Brahma Veda Brahmaiva Bhavati concept. The whole Vedic literary record is marked by two concepts, jnana and karma, and Brotachari has comprised these two main vows as the core, and the secondaries are Satya, Aikya, and Ananda. It advises man to acquire the one in many. If you know Ishopanishad, there is a line, Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat Tena Tyaktena Bhunjita. We have this line in our Brotachari songs and poems like Naho Bibhu Tumi Ko Bhu Bhinno He Jagot Judiyatar Chinho He. We do it in a group and with the dance. But the meaning is you are the all-pervading. And we have to practice this Tena Tyaktena Bhunjita with a line, Khidena Thakile Khaibona, Rag Paileo Rushibona. So maybe we are feeling of angriness, but we should not be angry. If we are not hungry, we should not have food. So this kind of line we have to practice everyday life with March. And Brotachari calls each other with G salutation, a G designation maybe. In North India, it is so famous like Kirish Ji, Balram Ji, Rukmini Ji. But here in Brotachari system, we give respect to a child also. Maybe he or she is a 7 years old child, but that child also we call him Shoham Ji or Rakesh Ji. We put that respect till now. So world brotherhood and world peace, world unity are the keywords of Vedanta as well as Brotachari. So although this philosophy has flourished all over the India, but now Bratacharis from India and from Bangladesh are participating in the full course training in Kolkata every year on December. So next slide. So as conclusion, Brotachari fulfills the practical aspect of theoretical Vedanta, the philosophy which is called Swachandavada, because to know your rhythm is the main core essence of this philosophy. It emphasizes love for all, and Guru Shata Datta has created cultural Vedanta, the main idea based on serve humanity, folk cultural revolution, and liberation. So he is a Neo-Vedic seer. He was a Neo-Vedic seer. And the modern education needs this MME or ARDP called Man Making Education or All Round Development Program. So it is a one step further towards Bhakti and Sufi movement as a last. Why it is so last slide. One step further, why? Because here Bhagavan and Khuda were worshipped together for betterment of humanity. And with the line of a Zari song, I would like to conclude. Allar name bainda ghar roshuler name chhaiyo shei ghorer majhe banda sukhe nidra jaiyo shei ghorer bhaire bhaire tirtho বারাণসী মুসলমানের ৩০ রোজা হিন্দুর একাদশী মুসলমান বলেন খোদা হিন্দু বলেন হরি মনে ভাইবা দেখ ভাইরে দুই নামেতেই তরি. So both the name leads towards ultimate reality. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you, Anushka. I'll now stop sharing the presentation and then see if there are some questions. Thank you so much for presenting this interesting community which uses Vedanta concepts for pedagogy and social development, and particularly the undivided Bengal. And let me see if there are questions for you. I see the comments actually.
There are some questions.
There are comments, right? So
no, there is one question: is can you tell if this way everyone can reach the level of that?
Yeah, can you tell if this way everyone can reach to the level of that being? My dad is an example of what you said, but not myself. Is it variable to the genetics? However, absolutely practical and simple presentation. This could be an area of deeper exploration for mental health. Ami Goa ke bhalobashi. Going for a walk and doing for that thing. Or should be Brahmachari, beautiful. From Dr. Rashmi. Can you comment on this? Is there? Let's first part of the. Can you tell if this way every can reach to the level of that being? Is method.
Yes, sir. Is it possible? It is possible because now we are doing some trainings in schools, and also we are trying to make a knot with our formal education, like in schools and college. So this is possible, sir. But throughout the life, so to be a Vrtachari, we have to try throughout the life, and because every day we have to follow this 5 vows, this is quite easy and at the same time quite tough.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other question, so we'll say thank you to you, and then we'll end your session, and we'll. Let me see if we can go to the gallery mode and then. Okay. So, so we had 5 presentations in this session, and if there is any question or the comment, we almost end of the time. We can take it very quickly, 1 or 2 questions. Otherwise, we'll close today's session.
Also, you can take pictures, Girishji, of everybody turning on.
So I'll ask everybody to turn on the video. I'll take a quick picture for records. So please turn on the video, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Rashmi, Dr. Indira. So I'll give you 10 more seconds to turn on your video, and then otherwise I'll take the picture as it is. Okay. Right. So I'll take the first shot, and then we'll shot number 1. Let me send it across. Take shot number 2. Okay, now shot number 2. Everybody smile, please. Okay, done. So thank you everybody so much. We had a beautiful session, 5 very lovely papers, and mostly, talking about pedagogy and deep thought from the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, talking about key Vedantic terms, So very interesting. I'm sure it will lead to deeper insights among all of us, and then we should be able to discuss it much further. Thank you so much once again. Balramji, any more information for tomorrow's?
No, I think, thank you, Girija. You handled it very well. And then also we missed one speaker, but that still kept us on time, exactly on time. And tomorrow will be the valedictory session. We look forward to everyone to join tomorrow. And until then, good night for those people who are in India, and good morning to most people who are in the United States.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Canada, and I didn't want to miss you. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.